All right. We are live.
We are live.
And let me get Pete F. So, Kevin from Cigar Prop. Quakes 30, what's up, bro? And Adam Wolf. We already got some good people in the chat. So that's awesome. Okay, I got to bring it down a little bit. Because I was hurrying and everything, I'm on 11 right now.
Yeah.
And I need to bring it down to 9.
Yeah, that's how we are right now. We're trying to we made it on time. We got it done.
All right. Here. So, gee whiz, where is everyone, man? We've only got 4 people. Kevin won't be here for long because I think he's got his thing with.
Hey, what's up, Kevin?
We got great people in the chat. Awesome.
Quakes. What's up, Adam? Quakes. What's up, Pete?
Okay, so, let's just, with no further ado, let's bring in the man, Mr. Pete Johnson.
I'm actually trying to repost your story because I actually have to find a link so I can actually invite people to watch because I think my thing passed already.
Do you want me to text it to you or something again?
Actually, post it again and tag me, and I'll post it.
Okay, I guess
I reposted it over 24 hours ago, which doesn't make sense to me, but I lost track of time.
Yeah, let me see here.
And then, of course, when I'm trying to log into this thing, I realize that I can't log in on Safari.
Oh yeah, that is a problem. Oh, what the heck? Oh, you know what? It's actually it's on my story right now. Oh, but the link isn't there. The link isn't there though.
Well, I mean, for people to watch it, right?
Yeah, let me see. It's on my story, but the link isn't there. So here, I'm just going to
do a new post. Yeah. Hey man, I got no place to be, so it's Friday night, and I'm under this thing called quarantine. So
yeah. I love this about you, man. You're like, I got nowhere to be. Let's do this. All right, here we go.
While you do that, I'm over here lighting up my cigar.
I feel like I need to turn up the lights around here. Hold on 1 second. I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. 6 people? Are you kidding me? We've got Pete Johnson, and we have 6 people in the thing.
Well, I got hit up by a couple people before I was getting on. They're like, "How do I watch?" I go, "I actually don't have any idea." So hold on. Okay. Did you tag me on that new one?
Yeah, I'm doing it right now. I'm putting the.
But you're getting all technical and shit. That's why.
Yeah. Okay, tag people. Here we go. I'm going to tag Mr. Oh, gosh darn it.
Please do not call me Mr. Johnson.
I'm going to I was going to say Mr. Tatawahe, but
is the lighting okay? The problem is if I turn on the other set of lights, it's the light right behind my head, and it gets really
washed out and stuff.
Yeah, it becomes too much, but
I think it looks good.
Let me know.
Okay, I just tagged you on it's a brand new post on my Instagram.
What's up, Ron? How's it going, brother?
Did you do Tatuai Cigars or Tatuai Inc.?
Oh, oh my gosh. I think I did Tatuaje Inc.
No, Tatuai Inc. INC is me, but it's not coming through yet, so.
Oh, yeah, that's what I did. It's the one that I always DM you at.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm not seeing this. Hold on 1 second. I'll just repost your last one. But there's no link in there, right?
Tatuaje Inc. Yeah, okay, here. I'm tagging you in the comments right now on the one I just did. So it's brand new. You probably don't follow me because I'm not important. So
no, it's not that. Okay, here we go. Follow back. Sorry about that, man. My apologies. And there is a link in there.
Bill Ragone said he just tagged everyone on his Facebook.
Perfect. Because
this is crazy. Usually it takes a few minutes for the show to kind of ramp up and stuff. Oh, no. Are you guys still there?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Yeah.
Did we lose you?
What are you smoking, Pete?
We did.
I'm actually smoking something out of the rare bin.
Oh.
I don't know if you know what that is. It's a Dark Lord Day. You ever hear of Three Floyds Brewing?
I never heard of that. No.
They do a festival called Dark Lord Day. And we went one year in 2014. I made cigars just for us to smoke during the time we were there.
Oh,
just something fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm smoking it's the brown label.
The brown label, the Kohonu 03, yeah.
Yeah, 03.
I can tell.
I don't know. I got
the classic.
The Havana 6.
Vic, you're back.
I'm back.
And what size is that? Is that the Noble? The Robusto size on the Havana 6? The Havana 6, the red label. Yeah.
Robusto?
Yeah, the Noble. Vic, did you get all your stuff sorted out? Because you blurred out for a second too. I wasn't sure if that was just your camera trying to find you.
No, it was my end. It was. So I live out in the country. I'm really remote, and I've got some internet issues from time to time.
Well, how remote are you? Because my brother has like the worst. I think Maine still has dial-up.
Oh, wow. He opens up his laptop and he's like, "You've got mail."
Yeah.
Don't laugh at that. I think my mom still has AOL.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, no, she does still have AOL.
That's hilarious. All right, so real quick, Rob is smoking the Havana 6. Caesar's smoking the 2003 Kohonu. Now, I had a question about that. Oh, by the way, I am smoking the 2018 Bride, the Monster.
Nice.
And this has been sitting in my humidor since then. And I bought 2 of them, and I haven't smoked either one. So I all day I've been thinking about this cigar.
So how do you comment on the chat room? You can tell I don't do this a lot. So I'm looking at all the comments, but I can't comment back, right?
Yeah, you can just say something to them.
I can read and comment.
Yeah.
I love the Fausto also.
Oh, the Fausto, nice.
Yeah. No, someone was talking about Fausto. I wanted to comment about it, but glad you guys are enjoying that.
Oh my gosh, this is awesome. This thing's been sitting in there, and I kept looking at it, thinking, when am I going to smoke this? And then today I actually was going to smoke the same cigar I was thinking about the 10th anniversary, and then I remembered I had this in the humidor, and I was like, no way, this is the night for this guy.
Well, Vic, I use sense memory for everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this cigar, which is I made kind of for fun for us to smoke during the Dark Lord Day that the Three Floyds does.
Okay.
Me and a bunch of buddies went to a bunch of BOTLs. Actually, went to Dark Lord Day in Indiana, right? I guess Indiana, and it's kind of like a beer festival meets a death metal concert, right?
That's awesome.
A death metal festival too.
Right.
They have like crazy bands playing while they're releasing their special edition beer. So I decided, hey, for fun, I'll make a few cigars for us to enjoy, and I'll print labels for them because I have blank labels, and you can see this label is not that pretty because the inside is actually serigraphed like a T-shirt.
Okay.
Like we literally take a silk screen and like silk screen each band. Well, these cigars have been sitting in the bundle since 2014. They were packed very fresh in the bundle, and they've been kind of marinating over the last 6 years, to the point of when I took it out of the bundle and I smelled the cigar, just the wrapper, it threw me back in time to, I will tell you, it was easily 1993.
All right.
I went to a guy's apartment in Hollywood, California. Like, he lived almost like in the basement of the Church of Scientology building, right?
Yeah.
But he was selling Cuban cigars. And I bought a box of Romeo and Juliet Cazadores that were wrapped in foil, very much like I wrap stuff in foil now.
Yeah.
And I opened up the bundle, and that same smell that I smelled off of this cigar threw me back in time to that smell off of that bundle from, what's that,
crazy how that
17 years ago?
Yeah, that's,
27 years ago.
Yeah, 27.
Wow.
So
now the band that's on that
crazy.
cigar almost looks like the TAA 2020.
It is the same TAA band. I made this as my exclusive series band, and I did this for a lot of private labels and store exclusives. But so in Cuba, they would always have a blank band, and it was always representative, representing the colors of the Cuban flag. But the bands were always set aside for dignitaries and politicians or whatever. And while the politician or the dignitary or the prince or whatever was at the factory, they would actually silk screen his name into the center of the band, and they would make a box of cigars just for him as he left the factory. So when it's an old thing that I basically stole from the Cuban history, because I was like, you know what? I've had friends that got married. Okay, I'll silk screen 50 bands and put their name in there. And I've had friends that had babies, and I put the birth date in the center of the band. So anytime I would do fun projects like this, the factory doesn't like it. Let's be real. The factory doesn't like it, but I don't know. I tread lightly in the factory because it's not my factory. It's the Garcia's factory, and I respect that. At the same time, it's my wife's factory, so they give me a little bit extra leeway. But I still try to respect the fact that it's theirs and not mine, and I always ask first. And listen, I didn't ask before I printed 20,000 blank bands, and I just said, hey, by the way, I have these blank bands. You think we can print a few of them with this person's name in the center? I don't do it as much anymore because it's really something that I would do when I would be down in Nicaragua, and right now we're just not getting down there.
So Kevin, real quick, wants to know about if you can tell us any info on the MBS.
The MBS is called the Monster Bomb Squad.
Right. So
years ago, Pepin Garcia actually started doing a project for a store called Firecracker. The actual idea for Firecracker was pitched to me first, and I thought it was a little strange. But I kind of like
Garofalo.
I kind of put it on the side and said, I'll think about it. But before I knew it, they ended up going to Pepin directly and doing it. Yeah. So years later, a bunch of people started copying the whole style of the cigar with the long wick.
Right.
And I just said straight out one day, I said, don't worry, I'll make you an M80. And an M80 is a play on the Firecracker whole thing. And I made a couple versions, iterations of the M80. And over the years, I just had no desire to make single store exclusives anymore.
Right.
I usually, when I would do a special edition for a single store, it would only be for them. But over the years, I said, there's no more single stores. Everybody's going to get a little piece of the pie, right?
Right.
I kind of wanted to share the project with everybody, and some stores agreed and some stores disagreed. And like Abe, we did like 1,500 boxes of Anarchy, Chaos with him, and then we made another 800 for another 50 plus stores that actually got an allotment of the other 800. So over the years, it's always been the rule for me. Like if you want a single store exclusive, you have to allow me to sell it to other people. And so when I was looking at the information that I had in the factory with all the leftover band inventory, like paper inventory, and I hate waste. That's a big thing for me. It's like I walk into the packing department and I see thousands upon thousands of bands just sitting there doing nothing from a project that I did 6 years ago. And I'm like, can we just burn this? And they're like, no, we have to fill out a lot of paperwork, and you can't just like literally throw it in the trash. You have to fill out a lot of paperwork because they're in a free zone. Well, I saw 18,000 Kruger bands.
Okay.
Sitting there, and I'm like, I got to do something fun with these. I'm not going to make Krugers again, but what could I do? And one day I was playing around with the whole bomb thing again. And again, it's not an original idea anymore. Multiple companies do it. Viaje, Eric Espinoza with his company. They actually have a cigar called La Bamba. Of course, Dave has his Firecracker, and M80 was always my thing that I made for someone else.
Okay.
So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a Monster Bomb Squad. So for every leftover band that I have of Monster series, I'm just going to do bomb versions of them, and just call it. I won't call it the bomb, and I won't put a bomb on the package. I'll just call it MBS, and make it pretty clear that it's Monster Bomb Squad. But I'm not, for trademark reasons, I'm not saying the name bomb because actually Eric Espinoza owns the trademark La Bamba. And out of respect for Eric, I don't want to tread on his stuff, right?
Okay.
So, MBS, Monster Bomb Squad. That's the true meaning of MBS. And the first iteration was the Kruger, and there was 18,000 of them. I have like 22,000 leftover Jason bands. And Jason was always going to be the first Monster Bomb Squad I wanted to do, but I didn't have broadleaf tobacco to use. So we're waiting for the broadleaf to finish processing, and I'm going to use it for next year.
Oh, cool.
And then, weird stuff. I have like 1,200 bands of the Michael left over, so that'll be a really limited batch of cigars.
Well, at least we know. In case we get,
there's like it's just a different expression of a different size of the original Monster blends. And that's all it is.
Yeah.
So literally, the MBS FK is the Freddy Krueger blend in a little M80 style cigar.
Gotcha.
Okay.
That's
Long
pretty cool.
So do you have a Frankenstein?
I never had leftover bands. The rumor was that I had like 80 leftover cigars in the factory. I never found them. They got lost in space. So someone's enjoying them.
I don't know why I just thought about Frankenstein is made out of different pieces, body parts. You make that a cigar with a bunch of different types of tobaccos from all the other monsters.
Well, I mean, we've had Frankenstein. We've had the Frank before, so the Frank was a particular blend.
Yeah,
but I actually, that's a fun idea. If I did not do the Frank previously, because the reason why I say that, because you make complete sense, because he was part of multiple parts, right?
Yeah,
right.
And I do what we call Cuban sandwich cigars, what we call picadora, which is a mixed fill cigar. If I was forward thinking back, 13 years ago, and I literally saved and separated all the scraps from the monster cigars.
That would have been awesome.
And then made a Franken bunch or a Franken sandwich. A Franken sandwich.
Right.
Brilliant idea, but man, let me go back. You know, everybody jokes about, you know, when they post a picture of like, what car would you take from movies, and everybody's like, I'll take the Starsky and Hutch car. I'm like, dude, take the time machine.
Oh yeah,
always the time machine.
Right.
You got to go back.
Right.
Okay.
Speaking,
I don't understand why they.
I would gamble so much with that.
yeah.
Yeah, I might be president.
Yeah.
Speaking of the monster stuff, if it kept on going, I would love to see. I would love to see the Pumpkinhead from the from the Pumpkinhead movie.
Well, I have a pumpkin. I have a pumpkin. Actually, the face of the pumpkin cigar actually kind of looks a lot like that. Yeah, I really felt like I needed to go back to one, like, because I've already been through all of them,
Right.
all the ones that I wanted to do, and then 2021, like this year is like an interim year, and we have a project called the Karloff, which is based off the Boris, right?
Ah, cool. Yeah.
So the Karloff is coming out. The artwork is actually pretty simple, white box with a, you know, his eyes, like the vision, like the little silhouette of his face.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And he played a lot of the classic monsters. And then next year, which will be 2021, we get to go back to one, which is Frankenstein. So next year you'll see the Frank again, which was the number one. So we can start from scratch again. Because there's a lot of people that didn't know the brand when I did the first 6 or 7 of them. So,
right.
You know, for me, it pains me when I hear that, you know, like I get hit up via email or Instagram or Facebook Messenger, and they're like, yeah, I've been smoking for 5 years and I'm trying to collect all your monsters, but people are asking, you know, $200 for a Frankenstein. I'm like, yeah, don't bother. Like,
yeah,
I don't want to see. I got 20 other cigars for you that you can enjoy instead of buying a Frankenstein for $200. The old collector guys are like, you're trying to kill the market. And I'm like, yeah, maybe.
I mean, I've never had.
They don't like the fact that I'm trying to kill the secondary market, but you know, I don't know.
Yeah, I've never had any of the monsters. They're hard to get. I've always tried, and every time I look, they're sold out, no matter what year it is or whatever.
Well, this last year was easier to find. Chuck and Tiff, you can probably still find some. I think
yeah, those weren't bad.
You know, a couple stores actually posted that they a lot of the problem with a lot of retailers. You know, this is not a problem really, but a lot of retailers get the product in and they go, well, let's put away a few boxes, and the next thing you know, the customers walk in, yeah, we're sold out, but they still have like 2 or 3 boxes of each stuck back in the background. So, and I just saw a post recently, a retailer local actually, he goes, look what I found when I was cleaning the humidor, and he posted a box of each. I'm like, there you go.
That's cool. Yeah. You know, so I've got kind of a just a soft place in my heart for Tatuaje because I used to work for DHL Express, and there was a Scottsdale Cigars in northern Scottsdale, Arizona. Back when Ahmad owned it, he doesn't own it anymore. But I used to go in there and just to get away from work for an hour at lunch or whatever, I'd go down there. And most of the time I smoked the Havana 6, but I also smoked the brown label quite a bit. And and I was going to that shop when the Monster Series was launched and stuff, and I remember I never got the first one. I just remember that like immediately they were hard to get, and Ahmad said he was going to get maybe a box or something. I can't remember. And I was like, well, let me know and stuff. And then the next time I went in there, he was like, they're all gone. After they launched and stuff, I was like, you got to be kidding me, man.
Yeah, the Monster Series kind of is, it's evolved over the years. The first one, it was released a certain way. It was only 13 stores, so only 13 stores got them. The second year, we realized that we needed to expand production on them to allow more people to have access for them. And then that's when I made the tragic mistake of trying to paint the inside of a box, which
I know that story.
Yeah, I recommend never trying it unless you can paint it, but you better let it sit open for like a year before you put a cigar in it. So over the years, the release has evolved a lot. Like this year, we only made 4,000 boxes of 13, which is actually lower than the normal production. And then on top of it, the funny thing about leftover bands, I got an email from the band producer. We have two band producers in that work. Well, we have multiple band producers, but two of them work in two countries. So one works in Nicaragua, and they also work in the Dominican Republic. So I had ordered a bunch of extra bands from the Dominican Republic, and I said, hey, do you guys have any leftover bands in Nicaragua? Because I need inventory, and their printing time right now has been like really slow, but they always have extra production, right? So they sent me a list, and they gave me the rundown of the brown label, the white label, the black label, and the red label. I'm like, okay, I need all those. The white label, thinking that those were the Series P with the red writing and the red artwork on them.
Okay.
No, it was extra Karloff bands. So they sent over. We got a text message from the factory, and they're like, "How many bands of Karloff did you order?" I said 52,000. They're like, they received 85,000 bands. I go,
oh wow,
what? Like, and I had to look, and I realized that the extra bands that said white on them were the Karloff bands.
Oh,
so I'm like, well, I'll figure something out for them. So maybe I'll do a Karloff MBS.
That'd be cool. I was curious how you end up with so many more bands than the cigars that go out in production.
Well, because so that's easy. When I order with the factory, I'll order 60,000 bands from the band producer, but they always make extra bands just in case something's wrong with the production of the 60,000 that they're sorting, right?
Okay.
When I order cigars from the factory, same thing. I tell them I need 60,000 cigars. They ship me 60,000 cigars, but they might have made 62, 61, 65, because they always want to be careful about having extras for sorting purposes. Because when they're sorting tobacco and sorting cigars once they're finished, not every cigar is going to look the same color, so they need to make sure that they sort out correctly, right?
Right.
And then once they leave the production floor and then go in the cold room to dry, after they've sat in the cold room for a while, they might come out and some might have been broken, or maybe some feel tight. So they all shift them to the side. Or maybe a roller and a pair of rollers is not doing a great job with the way they're bunching, and the grading people start feeling like hard knots in the cigars. Those are going to be put to the side. So there's always leftovers no matter what. But I don't take all the cigars. Like I say, this is what I want. This is what you need to send me, right? So that I get a bill from the band factory that says you ordered 60,000 bands, and I get a bill from the cigar factory that ordered 60,000 cigars.
Gotcha.
Most 100% of the time, I tell the factory, I said, all the leftovers I need banded and bundled and sent to me. So I have cigars at the office. So I have leftovers. So my buddy Dan, who does New Havana cigars, and he's also the face of Surrogates.
Okay.
He has a thing that he does on New Havana cigars called Everybody's Leftovers.
Okay.
And it's called ELO, like the band ELO, but Everybody's Leftovers. And Everybody's Leftovers are literally leftovers from random productions that we've had at the factory. Always, like, I would say 95% of the time, it's always leftovers of limited production stuff.
Oh, wow.
Production cigars we don't have leftovers on because we continue production.
Sure. Right.
Limited production. So maybe that number is wrong. It's more like 99% of the time. There's always a couple, random cigars that get put out there.
Wow, this monster is really good. It is really good, and I'm pretty happy with the size too. I don't normally go for something this size, but I think I'm pretty happy with the size too.
Yeah, I love a classic Churchill.
Yeah,
it's a pretty classic Churchill. Actually, the new Karloff is kind of like a shorter version of that, but a 49 ring gauge and like I think it's 6 3/8. So
right,
not quite 7, which would be a classic Churchill, and 7 5/8 by 49 would be a classic double Corona. It's actually a shrunk down version of it.
Gotcha. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the Strip, the Hollywood days, because you and I were in that same scene around the same time. I was there 88 and 89.
Okay, so I arrived in California in the summer of 89 for a few weeks after my high school graduation.
Okay.
And went out there for 2 weeks with a couple buddies of mine from high school and left California and said, I'm moving to California. And by, what was it? I want to say by October of the same year, I was already, no, was it October? My mom would know better because she told me she drove home crying after she dropped me off at the airport. But it was the end of 1989 where I moved to Hollywood completely. I actually went back home, had a job running a print shop because I used to run printing presses when I was younger.
Right.
And ran a college print shop for the summer or the end of the summer and into the fall season of the college. Saved about $3,000 and then moved to Hollywood. Rented an apartment with a friend of mine, a high school friend of mine. She was moving to Hollywood also. We were not boyfriend and girlfriend. We just happened to be friends, and we both wanted to go to the same place.
Right.
And I was there for I would say 2 months or 3 months, and I joined a band that was practicing in Jamul, California.
All right.
So this is in San Diego, like in the mountains in the desert of San Diego, called Jamul. Joined the band, and we went on a very small, short tour because the tour ended after like 2 stops.
Because of the hotels, right?
Because of the hotels. And plus, we were actually the opening act. There's a long story to all this, actually, because we were actually the opening act to a band called Monroe. And
oh my gosh, I remember Monroe. That is crazy.
The lead singer, we actually practiced in their same studio, and they were all friends of ours, and we knew all the members of Monroe for a long time. And the lead singer ended up becoming eventually over in life became like a country music guy.
Oh wow!
So if you looked him up now, he was a country music guy. But we ended up going on this short tour with him. But their band manager was like horrible. The guy that was running the tour was horrible, and by the second gig we were done. We were up in Victorville, California, and he's like, "Yeah, we got to go home." And the guys, we all looked at each other like, "What are we gonna do? We got no money. No one's working. Well, we had a little bit of money saved, but no one's working. We're living in basically the garage and the living room of our guitar player's mom's house in Humboldt, California." And I said, "Let's move to Hollywood, dude. I have an apartment there, and I'm still paying for it. Like,
Right?
Wow.
And my name's on the lease. Let's go back. I have one bedroom apartment, and we'll just explain to my roommate that we're moving in." And so I'm thinking there's going to be 5 guys and my one roommate, right? We'll
Right.
take her to the living room, and she'll have the bedroom. Well, we got there, and she was nowhere to be found. She sublet
Oh no!
to 3 other girls.
Oh.
Oh my gosh!
So literally, it was like by the time we got there, one of the girls moved out, and then the 2 sisters actually who had the bedroom stayed in the bedroom, and us 5 guys took over the living room. So there was 7 of us in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Well, this sounds like my story.
Yeah. And then we eventually got evicted. Yeah, we eventually got evicted, and then we moved right behind Man's Chinese Theater, and it was the Orchid Suites apartment.
Oh my gosh!
The Orchid Suites apartment, which, by the way, there were no suites.
Right.
It was a 1-bedroom apartment. So if you see old pictures of the band like hanging out in an apartment with a giant war like poster on the wall, that was the Orchid Suites.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a miserable place, man. That was nasty. That was the place where you turn on the lights and the 1,000 cockroaches would scatter. Yeah,
That's a real story. I have a similar experience with that.
dude.
So
Joe's apartment, right? Joe's apartment. Was it not the movie Joe's Apartment?
Oh yeah.
yeah, absolutely the same thing.
Exactly it.
I went to Musicians Institute out there, and
Do you play guitar or bass?
drums. I'm a drummer, man.
Oh, so you went to, dude, I always wanted to go, couldn't afford it. And I ended up playing with a few guys that actually ended up going, and they became such amazing musicians, like because
Yeah.
it's so technical and they just really go hardcore. And
Yeah.
I never had the training. Like my training was like sitting in a room with like a headset on so I could actually hear what was being played, and then I would
Right.
play it by ear. And training was just practicing a lot. But I actually wish I would have gone to a technical school, because people that came out of MI or GI or BI, they're like stupid. Like you can't even touch them. So I'm sure you're a very talented drummer.
Well, okay. So the story behind that was I went to high school in Montana. I saved up. I paid for it myself, and I saved up. I think I saved up for 3 years. And there's a couple great stories in my adventures of saving up money for that place. But anyways, I was pretty big deal in Montana in all the different Class A through Class C schools and stuff and everything. Everyone knew about me as a drummer because I was real flashy and all this stuff. So I went to MI thinking, I was pretty cool, and I got my butt handed to me on a platter. I was
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
I wouldn't even be. I was a good bass player. I was a good solid backbone to a band, but I would they would destroy me at BIT. They would destroy me. So,
well, especially back then, because you had Joe Satriani and Steve Vai and all these Guitar Hero guys, and everyone was Paul Gilbert. Paul Gilbert taught there for a while, and everyone was like, they had to be that level, and it was sick.
So you'll know, like, I actually ended up in a band with a MI graduate, which ended up being Marilyn Manson's guitar player, Rob.
Oh wow,
Zombie's guitar player. So John Five,
yeah,
whose real name is John Lowry. I played in a band with him and Randy Castillo from Ozzy Osbourne for a short period, and I was the reason. I was like the catalyst for them to change their style, because they were kind of like a biker style band. It was John, Randy, and this guy named Frank, who was the singer from the Four Horsemen, and Frank's bass player from his band, and they were kind of like a biker metal. And when I joined the band, I was kind of all over the map. I was listening to rap music. I was listening to, obviously stuff from Seattle and Nine Inch Nails, and I had a keyboard that would do MIDI shit, and I would mess around with that. And I said, how about we do something that's like Nine Inch Nails meets Nirvana? And there's actually a recording of the music out there. I don't know if you might be able to find it. It's called Red Square Black.
Okay.
Square Black.
And I'm nowhere in the picture because I got kicked out of the band because the singer of the band that they wanted to bring his own bass player. So I got booted. And by the way, it's pouring rain in Miami now, and luckily I moved inside a little bit, but it's still pouring again. So if it gets loud, it's the rain, not me. So I got booted from the band because they the singer wanted his own bass player. I realized after I heard on KNAC one time they were launching the recording, their EP, and their DJ on KNAC said, "Hey, we have a new band called Red Square Black. We're going to play." And I was like, I happened to be in my living room at the time, listening to KNAC, and I heard them say that. I was like, oh shit, they came out with an EP. And as I'm listening to the song that they released, it was the song I wrote.
Oh my God.
And it was also me playing on the track because I knew the style I played, because I played with a pick and their new bass player played with his fingers.
Do you know the name of the song?
Just Another Day, if I remember correctly. I have it on my there's a long story to this. There's a fun long story, actually.
Hold on. Listen to this.
Okay.
Hold on. Give it a second.
Just Another Day.
Just Another Day.
Okay.
Hold on. I'm gonna pause that.
This is.
Are you finding it?
Can you hear it?
It's static. We can't hear it.
Oh, it's static.
Well, there's a little click thing going on in the beginning of that song. So John Lowry and I wrote that song, right? It was based off of a riff that I was playing in practice one day, and he goes, "What's that?" I go, "No, just something I'm messing around with." And the next thing you know, we end up writing the song together.
Okay.
And the song obviously evolved when they got the singer in. But the tracks were laid down by Randy, myself, and John. So they only brought the singer in to actually do the lyrics and the voice. So I could hear that I was playing on that only because I was playing with the pick. Well, fast forward, if there's a Marilyn Manson song that sounds very reminiscent to it.
Really?
So I realized that John likes to recycle things a lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah. If you listen to it, there's like there's the tempo and the intonation of the way that the song feels, and you're like, yeah, dude, that's just like a version of the Red Square Black song, just kind of changed up that 10%, right?
Yeah.
Huh.
Man, just to let you guys kind of know how crazy Hollywood for me was brutal, because so I worked. It took me a long time to find a job. I had saved up some money to try to get by for a little while until I found work. When I finally found what's that?
What'd you do?
So there was okay. Do you remember where the Guitar Center was on the Strip?
Yeah, my office used to be across the street from it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So just like 2 doors down from Guitar Center, right? The biggest music shop pretty much in that area. There was a little tiny store that was owned by a Canadian brother and sister named Jerry Tune.
Yeah.
And I got a job at Jerry Tune, and I was only paid once a month on commissions only. Ooh. And
wow.
It sucked because we're right next to. So I ended up selling a vintage Marshall half stack to Pilsen, Jeff Pilsen from Dawkin.
Yeah.
After he left Dawkin, and it happened to be Ron Keel's half stack. But the way that I made money so that I could just eat was I would overcharge on drumsticks, on guitar strings, whatever. I would just charge like an extra $1 or $2, make a little extra money. I would pocket it, and then there was a guy down the street named Mr. Bagel that made amazing bagels.
Mr. Bagels, yeah.
And I used to go down there and buy a couple bagels, and that was like my food for the day, man. And I'd buy a can of beans or something. It sucked, man. It was so bad.
Yeah, dude, Rock and Roll Ralph's, man. That was the place. Like,
yeah.
I'll tell you, like, if you need a recipe for top ramen,
yeah,
I'm your guy, because I had so many versions of it, and there's a trick to top ramen if you really want to have a good flavor to it. I didn't make it like a soup. I actually made it because I wanted the noodle. And I would get soy sauce, a little bit of the packet, and butter, and that's what we ate, dude. Like, or rice. I became a very good rice cooker. But I mean, 5 guys in a 1-bedroom apartment with no money. I had a job actually in a clothing store in Westwood, and I would have to get on a bus in Hollywood, change bus stops at the Whiskey A Go-Go, and then they would finally go all the way into Westwood, and that's when I'd get off and walk to the shop, right?
Right.
Actually, I had to change 2 bus stops actually, because there was one on Westwood and Sunset, and then they would change another bus that would go into Westwood. Did you have long hair, by the way, back then?
Oh, yeah. My hair was all the way down to my butt. Straight, long, blonde hair.
So I had straight, long brown hair and very skinny.
Yep.
I've always been 6 foot since I left high school, and I was 6 foot, soaking wet, 145 pounds. And now I'm, I don't know, 235.
Yeah, back in those days, I was 6 foot, $1.25.
Wow. See, yeah, there you go. It was cool to be skinny back then, or was it because we didn't have any food?
I've told these guys stories about being on the Strip wearing latex pants with lace down the sides and stuff. Yeah, and
I actually used to make my own pants. Actually.
Oh man, those were crazy days. Those were absolutely crazy days. And you had to pay to play on the Strip. It sucked. Bill Gazzari. You remember Bill Gazzari, yeah?
Yeah. No, we played Gazzaris, but don't remind me about paying to play, because so I want to talk about. I love talking about the old days, so I want to continue on this shit. This is fun, but I want to kind of bring up a topic in the cigar industry.
Okay.
That happened, and I won't say who, but there was a retailer that was like, they came to us and said, hey, if you want to be part of our event, you have to give us 3,000 cigars or whatever it was. It was like 500 cigars and then a box of cigars, and then you have to give us $3,000 to sponsor. And I'm like, that feels like paying to play.
Right.
That's what it felt like. So I eventually came to the point where it was like, listen, I don't pay to play anymore. I did that. I had to do it. If you want to carry my product, great. If you want me at the event, I'll gladly come, but I need you to buy the product at a discounted price for me to come to the event. But I'm not going to give you a credit or because you're promoting my brand, because I feel like I'm back on the Sunset Strip at the Roxy and they're selling me tickets for $3,000.
Yeah.
I have to go out and sell. And if I don't sell them, I've just lost $3,000, right?
Yep.
So I just kind of like, I made a hard stance. I was like, and I told my sales reps, I go, I don't pay to play. That was part of my past. And it really stung when I had to do it back then. And that's not where I am now. But yeah, so back to, I would go out to my work in Westwood. I worked for a clothing store, and I had painted black fingernails. I was skinny. And then I was a pretty good looking boy. But dude, I'll tell you that the hate that I got from people, like guys that just looked at me funny or called me bad names.
Yeah.
Because of the way I looked, it was not fun. So, but when you're on the Sunset Strip amongst the thousands of other people who look like you felt pretty damn comfortable.
Yeah, win and roam. Yeah.
No, the stories that Vic talks about wearing those tight pants and all that, and what you guys are talking about reminds me of that movie, The Dirt. Have y'all seen that movie?
Oh yeah.
The story of
that was a little bit before us.
Yeah.
It's the same stuff. It was the same exact thing.
The strip is nothing now. I mean, back then it was just total mayhem, and it was fun and exciting, but at the same time, it just sucked the life out of you because it was so hard to do anything.
It was hard. I mean, we became fairly popular pretty quick. Like literally, we moved up to Hollywood from Humul at the beginning of 1990, and we jumped into the whole scene playing like the No Bozo Jam at the Whiskey, and then we finally said, okay, let's try getting a slot on one of these shows at the Roxy where one of our friends are playing, because our friends were like, hey, we're headlining a show. You could probably get in. So we'd go see a promoter at the Roxy and buy the tickets and do the whole thing and have to promote the shit out of flyering.
Yeah.
And hey, you want to buy our tickets for $10? And people are like, $10. They're like, at some point they're like, okay, how about $5? Like, we need to recoup something. And we all end up having jobs. A lot of the guys were telemarketers.
Yeah.
Of course, I worked in a real store and got paid real wages, at least minimum wage.
Right.
Telemarketers, you got paid based on your performance. There's so many crazy stories about telemarketing or what some of my band members had to do on the phone to make money. Right. But like my brother-in-law was in another band in Hollywood also. He ended up marrying my half sister, so he's my brother-in-law, right?
Okay.
He was actually in a competition with us at the Troubadour one day. They brought in a bunch of bands to audition at the Troubadour for Budweiser, and our band won the audition, and we got sponsored by Budweiser.
Wow, cool!
And the band that we beat out ended up being my brother-in-law's band.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
And I met my half sister before I met him. Like I knew him. And then I met my half sister because she worked for Washburn. She worked for a company called Music Corp that did like training, like online, not online training, but video recorded trainings.
Right.
And then she ended up working with Washburn, and we ended up playing the NAMM show, opening up for the Washburn show. And then fast forward, I find out that she's dating this guy and eventually engaged to this guy, and I'm like, I know JJ. He played in that band that we beat. So
that's crazy.
yeah, it's a small. The Sunset Strip was tough, but it ended up being a really small world, and a lot of those people are kind of like lifetime friends. No matter what, if you end up being around them, you can get back together and have a conversation with any of them. We hung out with a small group of bands because we practiced in the same rehearsal studio. One was a band called Imagine World Peace, and another one was called Blackboard Jungle. And Blackboard Jungle eventually would have a reunion show every year, like up until I think they've continued to have the show. So the last time we actually got together to play as a band was 2009. We played at the Viper Room opening up for Blackboard Jungle.
Oh, wow.
So they would always invite old bands that either they knew or practiced with. And even they said when we were during rehearsals, they're like, yeah, we don't remember you guys being that heavy. Because we kind of evolved, because all the guys in the band were very into a lot of music.
Right.
It spread across the genres. I mean, like there was no real, like we were kind of hair metal, like that pretty boy hair metal. We wouldn't go makeup, but we were that pretty boy Skid Row, Warrant style.
Yeah.
And eventually we kind of evolved, and we started getting closer to what we all liked, because like our drummer was a big like King Diamond fan.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Mickey D was one of my favorite drummers growing up, man.
He was one of the most impressive drummers that the world ever got to see, right?
Huge influence for me.
So we were all over the map when it came to influences. So eventually we evolved pretty hardcore. I actually miss those days, because they were simple days. You didn't really think about anything, and you were exposed to some of the coolest music ever.
Yeah.
Like I saw Alice in Chains before they actually were. They were called Alice in Chains, but they were secretly playing around Hollywood under the Butt Nuggets.
Oh my gosh!
So I actually walked into a club one night, all dressed up in my Sunday's best, whatever.
Right.
with the laced up spandex. Or laced up stretch jeans, actually. And there was this band that just was going off, and I'm like, wow, they're pretty hardcore. Like, who is this? And they're like, oh, they're called the Butt Nuggets. I didn't even think anything of it. Then we went to see a show at the Palace, and it was Extreme, who was a big influence for us, because they did a lot of harmonies, and that's what we did also. And Extreme had an opening act called Alice in Chains. And I looked at the guys and I go, dude, that's the Butt Nuggets. Like,
pretty amazing name.
Butt Nuggets.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
Yeah, so you'll see a lot of influences from Extreme. We were kind of like by the time we ended, we were kind of like a mix between Extreme and Alice in Chains, right?
Okay.
We were actually signed to a law office that joined together, and it was Greenspan and Light. I can't remember if it was Greenspan and Light or Light and Greenspan, but Eric Greenspan and then Jeffrey Light. Eric Greenspan did all the hardcore bands like Jane's Addiction, Chili Peppers, Ice-T's heavy group that he had. And then Jeffrey Light did all the traditional, Sunset Strip rock and roll style bands like the Bullet Boys and Slaughter,
right,
and stuff like that. And we were kind of in between. So they picked us up. They represented us for a short period of time, and then they called us in. It's funny. I remember it pretty vividly. They called us in for a meeting, and it was literally one of those like, "We're going to let you go" meetings. And they said, "Listen, we really wanted to work with you, but we just signed a new band, and you need to concentrate on them, and you sound a little too much like them. So it's almost like a repeat of them." And that band was Stone Temple Pilots.
Oh wow!
So
wow!
So we ended up getting new lawyers. We ended up getting new lawyers, which actually, this is the funny part. The lawyers that picked us up wanted a hard rock heavy metal group because they represented Tiffany and Yanni.
Oh my gosh! Wow!
So yeah, we had good management though. The management was actually a side project for Left Bank Management, who did the Bee Gees, Richard Marx, Duran Duran.
Holy cow!
The guy that actually worked at Left Bank, what was his name? Ed something. He really just wanted to have this side project, and his team at Left Bank actually allowed him to help us out. So it was a good organization to be part of. Dude, I even drive by the building where Left Bank was at that time, and I was like, oh, that's where Left Bank was. Like Hollywood has like this soft spot for me. So when I opened up my cigar company, and I ran out of room where I was literally like using space at the Grand Havana room to like ship my cigars. And eventually, when I needed to be a real serious company and have my own office and the whole thing, the first thing I did was like I went down to Sunset Strip and I rented a storefront on Sunset Strip to have my warehouse on Sunset across the street from the Guitar Center.
Holy cow! Wow. That's crazy. So that was. And that was Tatawahe. So that was around 2003, 4, something like that.
2003, I was still at the Grand Havana room, and I worked at the Grand Havana all the way up until 2006.
Okay.
And I realized by 2006, I realized I couldn't do both things.
Right.
I kept both jobs because I didn't think that I could do the cigar company and my own job, and actually. The cigar company was supposed to be a hobby. It was supposed to be like an extra paycheck, right?
Right.
And then by 2006, it was like I can't even handle the demand on the product. So I mean, that was a good thing because I got to be my own man and have a business that was actually viable enough to be a freestanding thing where I didn't have to have a second job to pay the bills.
Right.
And if you look at the way a lot of the cigar companies over the years have been through, their starts. Look at like a guy like Omar from Fratello.
Mm-hmm.
He was still working at NASA when he started Fratello.
Yeah.
And eventually Fratello got to a point he's like, wow, I actually got to make a move and leave NASA because the brand Fratello is doing good enough for me to concentrate on making my own name and making my own brand.
Right.
So that's kind of the way, dude. That's kind of the way cigar companies start. A lot of cigar companies just don't start selling millions of cigars their first week.
Right.
Most of the time, a lot of people have either money in the bank, or they have a backup job like me or Omar, which is like, I need that job because that's the only way I can pay my bills.
Yeah. So what was the whole thing behind Tatuaje name on the company? Like what made you get that name? Did you have any other names for the company?
Yeah, actually one of the names, the name of the company was always, like I always had that. It was always called Havana Cellars because I loved the history of cigars and Havanas, obviously. And then I loved wine. So it was a cross between wine and cigars, Havana and wine cellar. Havana,
Okay.
Cuban wine cellar. So cigars and wine. And I was struggling to find the name. And one of the names that actually came up with us was a cigar name called La Riqueza, which is the next cigar I'm going to light up. And La Riqueza just happened to be on my plate, but I was like, I don't know if it says anything to me right now. And then my nickname in the cigar business was Tattoo Pete. Everybody called me Tattoo Pete because when I showed up on the trade show floor back in the early and mid 90s, I was the only guy with tattoos showing. Maybe people had tattoos, but I was the only guy with sleeves, right?
Right.
So I was kind of like the minority in the group of like, well, who's the kid with the tattoos? And they, oh, that's Tattoo Pete. And it was a nickname given to me by the Fuente family.
Oh, wow.
Because I got an Opus X tattoo on my back of my right arm, right?
Okay.
So one day I was at the Grand Havana Room, still working there, obviously. And I walked up to one of the bus boys and I said, hey, how do you say tattoo in Spanish? He goes, tatuaje. And I go, okay, that's the name then.
That's cool.
And everybody's like, what? You want to call it what? No one can pronounce that. I go, yeah, but I can pronounce it, and it means something to me because it's my nickname, and it represents me because I have tattoos.
Yeah.
So why can't it work? And of course, I came out and like everybody from every other cigar company is like, dude, are you crazy? Like, you can't pronounce the name and you're making a cigar in Miami that's $10. Are you nuts?
Right.
I go, maybe, but the cigar is really good. Like, and I kind of stuck with that. Like, I kind of like I remember being at a trade show, even in 2004, and a retailer came up to me who I was friendly with, that I had known for already 9 years, maybe. He goes, yeah, I got the samples, but tell me why the cigar's $10. And I go, well, the cigars are made in very small production. They're made in Miami, Florida, by a very small group of people. And, back then, cigars were still $6, $7, $8. So
Yeah.
$10 was like a shock for people. And I was like, this is why it is. And actually, one of my friends from a big cigar company, a very big cigar company, a very well-known family-owned cigar company, said, tell them because you tell them that you're trying to put your kids through college. I don't have kids, first of all. Just tell them that they're $10 because you're putting your kids through college. And I said to him, I don't have kids. He goes, okay, tell them that you're trying to put your niece and nephew through college. But I just always stuck to my guns. Like, there's value there because the cigars are made by true artisans in a very small capacity in what I'm proud to say, in a place that we still make cigars in the United States. And I'm very proud of it. Pepin's very proud that we make cigars in the United States. And just because we have a factory in Nicaragua that can produce, 12 million cigars a year, not just for me, but multiple companies.
Yeah.
It's still super awesome that we can make cigars that we can only make 400,000 cigars a year in a factory in the United States. And
right.
And we really haven't increased the prices all that much over the years. They're still ranging from $10 to $14 or $10 to $15. I do have some really super small projects in Miami that we make in minute quantities. I have one roller roll them, and we actually pay him a little extra to roll less when he rolls his cigars.
Oh, wow.
And I purposely priced them kind of just outrageous, just like, this is the price point. And I hate to be that guy, but I just said, listen, that's the price. If you don't want it, I'll smoke them all.
Right. Yeah.
But that's the price, and you know, I have a lot of other cigars out there that are very well priced, but these ones I'm keeping them close to the vest, you know.
So can you find those cigars? Can a consumer find those cigars in Miami area or what?
No, actually, they're in 3 locations in the country right now because I usually have to go and do an event with the retailer, and the retailer actually there's kind of like a criteria. The retailer has to be in my top retailers. They have to carry a certain amount of SKUs, a certain product line. There's a lot of qualifications that I stick to, and so one of them is Ambassador Fine Cigars in Castile and Peoria. They carry them. The other one is Up Down in Chicago. The guys at Up Down carry them. The funny thing I wasn't even able to get to the event because I double booked myself, so I had to be at another event at the time. So my brother and Dan actually went to the event and they presented the cigars to them. And the third place is Davidoff Madison Avenue.
Oh wow!
And the crazy thing is Davidoff Madison Avenue has been essentially closed during this whole time, and they have like 3 clients that are literally, they must be eating these cigars because they keep on reordering them. And when I say they're not cheap, they're not cheap.
Wow.
Can you give us just a ballpark? One stick. What's it go for?
Well, they range from $43 to $67 a piece.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Wow.
They're in single coffins. It's a throwback to old Cuba. Just everything about it. It's been one of those labors of love for me, a project that I've been wanting to do for years. Have talked about multiple iterations of it over the years, and they're originally going to be made in Nicaragua, and eventually I just said, you know what, I'm going to make them in Miami, and I'm going to have this roller do them, and I'm going to have them make them in small production. And what a lot of people don't know about Miami is that we can't increase production in Miami. We have a set amount of rollers that make a certain amount of cigars. So for me to cut production on a regular production stick that I sell for, $10, $11, $12, $13, I need to have a reason, because I need those $10, $11, $12, $13 cigars way more than I need these other cigars, right?
Right.
So I literally say, okay, we have enough inventory of that. Stop producing that and concentrate on literally, when I say small quantities, I go stop production and make 500 of these, 500 cigars.
Wow.
So, not a lot. So that's like 1 week's production for when he rolls these. That's 1 week's production.
Oh wow.
So 100 cigars a day, 5 days in a week, and then when he makes the 500, I let him sit in the humidor for a long period of time, sometimes 6 to 8 to 12 months, and then they get packed in their coffins and they rest literally until people order them, and they're only ordering from those 3 stores.
Wow.
So a lot of the cigars in the boxes have over a year on them.
Wow.
Yeah. So one of the gosh darn it, I'm spacing his name right now, but one of the guys that used to work for Ahmad at Scottsdale now works at Ambassador. He's actually been at Ambassador for a few years now, and I'm gonna have to pop in there and maybe throw down on one of those.
Barton has been one of my largest supporters since 2004. He's always been what I consider a dear friend, and
his shops are gorgeous.
His shops are gorgeous. He cares for every cigar. Like, every cigar to him is a gold bar, right?
Yeah.
He cares for every client that walks through the door, regardless of who you look like or what you look like or what you do for a living. Because the way he presents himself is lavish, and he wears a suit to work every day. It doesn't mean that he's not going to service the guy who drives the dump truck, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody's the same person, no matter what. And the fact that he carries every SKU that I make, and that's not a little amount of cigars. That's a lot of cigars.
Yeah.
So in the end, he pretty much gets anything I do.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I've talked to them a few times. They have their private lounge.
Yeah, the Davidoff Lounge. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I mean it's something like $3,000 a year, and they almost sold me on it one time because so I travel a lot for work, except for right now, but I travel a lot, and I'm always getting in late and everything. And I was talking to them, and they were saying, you have a fob, you get in 24/7 anytime. You go in there and I was like, oh my gosh, this could be really cool, man, to have a place like that. But
the only rule is that you need to be a gentleman and you need to clean up after yourself. That's it.
Yep. Yeah, that's a cool place. So I was going to ask you about. Okay, I don't know if I'm remembering this right, so correct me if I'm wrong. But if I remember correctly, Don Pepin was a name back then, but my father didn't exist yet. And his own brands didn't exist yet. But if I remember correctly, he was very well known, but so far as domestically, really sort of took off after your stuff started getting so popular, wasn't it?
Well, okay, so it's a long story, and it starts in Cuba. So he was very well known within factories that were more like towards the center of the island, and people in Havana that worked in the cigar industry obviously knew him because they worked with him.
Right.
But he had a name a very large name, big name in his region, and people knew about him in Havana. If you weren't in the cigar industry in Cuba, you wouldn't really know about him. You would hear rumbles of there's a guy in the center of the island that's making amazing cigars.
Right.
No one really knows who he is, type of thing, right? I always say that Pepin was never Havana famous, because the rollers that were in Havana that were working at the factory, and they would eventually get promoted to be like the rollers in the shops. Like Partagas had a store, right? La Corona had a store. The Hotel Nacional has a store in it. So rollers that were excelling in their craft would get basically jobbed out to go work at the stores as like the show roller, right?
Okay.
They were the show rollers, and those guys became famous because you knew about people in Havana. Like I knew about people in Havana. I didn't know about the guy in the center of the island. So I knew about a guy by the name of Rodolfo Taboada, who was super famous to the guys in California. Like we would get bundles of cigars made by Taboada, and they were like gold. Like you could sell them for whatever price you wanted. They were custom made. Everything was like small batch. Someone would go to the store, order like 100 cigars, come back at 5, pick up the 100 cigars. Next thing you know, we would see them in California. I knew about a guy named Hamlet way before he became who he is now.
Right. Wow.
I heard stories about Hamlet about being like the next Rodolfo Taboada. He was like that guy. And like people would be like, "Hey, if you're going to Havana, look up Hamlet." Like he had a name. So I always joke like they were Havana famous.
Right.
Havana famous. Pepin never wanted to move to Havana. So when Pepin moved into the United States, he actually moved to Nicaragua first. And eventually his daughter, my wife now, his daughter Yanni came to the United States at the end of '97, worked 3 jobs, worked her ass off to build money and savings up enough to figure out a way to get her father into Nicaragua. And eventually with her father in Nicaragua, she continued to work her ass off with the 3 jobs, and her dad worked his ass off in Nicaragua, and they eventually saved more money to get Jaime, their mother Maria, and Jaime's wife Dianelli, or who we call Donnie, who was also a roller in Nicaragua. And from Nicaragua, they left Nicaragua and came to the United States. So by the time they came to the United States, still nobody knew about them. But I had a friend, an old friend of mine, who called me and said, "Do you still want to make cigars?" I said, I've always had the dream of having my name on a cigar. I've been working in the cigar industry for a while now, and it's been one of those lifetime passions to have a brand name with my name on it, whatever that be. And he goes, "Well, I got a guy that works for us now named Pepper." That's what I call him, Pepper. He might be able to make you a good cigar. And they made me a couple samples and sent them to me, which I didn't like. And then eventually, my friend Ben called me and says, "Don't worry, they're going to come to Los Angeles and we're going to sit down and roll you a couple cigars in front of you to see if you like anything." And at the time, Pepin worked for a company called Tropical.
Worked for who?
A company called Tropical, which was owned originally by a guy by the name of Pedro Martin, who eventually sold it to a guy by the name of Eduardo Fernandez, who owns Ag and Norfolk, right?
Right, yeah.
So they came, we met, we talked, they wrote me a couple samples, which I didn't like again. And then I eventually had a conversation with Pepin through translation about what I wanted in a cigar. And he smiled and literally sat down and rolled me a cigar that I fell in love with. Because he rolled me a Cuban cigar. Like, he took the same tobaccos that he rolled those other cigars with and actually manipulated it in a way that I was like, that's not even close to being the same cigar you just rolled me. And that now tastes more like a Cuban than anything else I've ever tried.
Wow.
So we built our brands together. Tatuaje came first. About 3 months after Tatuaje, Don Pepin came out. And I would say the brand Tatuaje took off first.
Right.
But his name, eventually caught up. And by the time they got to Flor de las Antillas as the number one, we were like this as companies, and they went like this, which I'm actually okay with because I like being here. I love the boutique mentality. I love the boutique style. I've always been small-minded when it comes to business. We're not a big company. We have 4 employees.
Oh wow!
Like 4 full-time employees, and then my brother and Dan, who work the brands on the streets. They're technically employees too, but they're 1099 contractors, but they're still business partners of mine. And then of course we have the sales reps, but in-house it's myself and 3 other guys. So it's a small company. We're very small-minded. I still do all the books. My guy Andy in the office, who was my first employee, he's like the guy that sits and does all the invoicing every day. So we've always tried to be like under a certain level. And I'm very proud to be in the caboose of the My Father train. I'm okay with that.
Right.
Because they're a driving force that I don't think any company can touch.
So when you mentioned Hamlet, are you talking about Hamlet, who's associated with Rocky Patel right now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys, there's only one Hamlet.
Gotcha. So
because I actually have a cigar. You know, my mind has I've lost a lot of memories. I think I remember more about the Sunset Strip than I do about the early days. But I have a cigar called the Grand Kohonu, and the Grand Kohonu was something that a friend of mine asked me for, a retail shop in Studio City, California, that's no longer there. It was called the Big Easy. My buddy Eric owned the Big Easy, and he carried every brand, every size that I made, and he said, "Hey man, you got to make it big, like big ring gauge." And me being a traditionalist, and this was before big ring gauges really took off.
right.
Me being a traditionalist, I kind of put it off. And I told my buddy Eric, I said, "Yeah, man, you know, I kind of lean towards the old Cuban Vitolas. But if Cuba decides that they're going to make a big ring gauge cigar, I might kind of follow suit." Well, fast forward. This is a conversation I had with him over a couple-year period. A buddy of mine brought me a cigar that was custom made in Havana by this guy named Hamlet, and it was a 5x60 with a covered foot. And this is early on that I never heard of Hamlet at the time, but he goes, "Well, there's a roller down there, and he's making these crazy fucking, custom rolled cigars, and I got a 5x60 with a covered foot." And I went to the factory in Miami. And I said, I want to do a 60 ring gauge, and I have the Kohonu, so I want to do it in the Kohonu blend. You have a 60 ring gauge molder? Yeah, we have a 60 ring gauge molder. Okay, I want to do a 6.5x60. They call it the Grand Kohonu because the Kohonu is the 6.5x52. That's where it all started. That's why the covered foot is on the Grand Kohonu.
Wow.
So if you look now, we actually have a Grand Kohonu Series A, which is a 5x60, which was actually a dedication to one of our dogs that passed away named Arnold, who was a 135-pound Rottweiler that was a beast. And I figured this is a good size cigar. And I always wanted to do a shorter version of the Grand Kohonu. So we did this Grand Kohonu Series A for Arnold.
That's pretty cool.
That is.
Yeah, so Hamlet, dude, super talented roller. Rocky's got an amazing person to work with. Great guy. Hamlet is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Very proud man, though. I will tell you that.
Oh yeah.
If you meet him once and you have a good rapport with him, and then you see him and just wave hi to him, that's offensive to him. He wants you to come over and have a conversation because he knows that you have a rapport with him and he wants to have those conversations because he's a very proud man, but a good dude, real good dude. And Rocky's lucky to have him on board with him.
That's cool. That's really cool.
And vice versa. Hamlet is lucky to be working with a guy like Rocky because Rocky is one of our parts of our industry that helps the industry move forward. So, it's nice to be part. It's nice to have good people in this industry. It's nice to be part of a good group of people that really push the industry forward.
Yeah.
So that's a good segue to a question I have up, and you don't have to say any names or anything, but is there anything, especially maybe in the last, I don't know, 5, 8, 10 years, that's trends that you've seen or whatever, stuff going on in the industry that has sort of had you disconcerted, just like, I wish this wouldn't happen or whatever.
Well, I mean, obviously, when I started seeing, I mean, I was early on in the 60s, and that was a stretch for me.
Right.
When I started seeing 70s and 80s and 90s, like, I don't know about this. I don't know. I can't really call out anything because I have crazy, silly ideas. I was kind of one of those rogue cigar guys that came up with, things like the Monster series and things called, the Butcher series where we called things pork tenderloin and stuff like that.
Right.
I think the most unflattering part of the industry is when people don't stay in their own lane. And they literally like just completely bite off of people, and it's blatantly biting off of people.
Can you give us an example without revealing too much, or just something?
No, you know what, man? Like, listen, I'll be honest. Dave Garofalo, that his little firecracker thing was like a unique twist to the industry. People have been doing long pigtails for a while, but for him to call it a firecracker was interesting, and it was like modeled after a certain thing.
Right.
And when I came up with the M80 for him, by that time there were like 4 or 5 companies that were doing the same thing. So I was like, it's no longer a unique experience.
Right.
And it's no longer a unique idea. So when it came for me to do like the MBS, I was like, well, that sounds like fun. I had done a couple M80 style cigars for my club, the Saints and Sinners group, a couple times. So like, I bit off that concept a little bit, but I had been doing it for a long time, and everybody's doing it, so I'm going to do it too, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think listen, man, if I call something pork and someone else calls it pork, that's the problem, right?
Yeah. Right.
And that's where a gentleman's conversation has to come in and say, hey, you mind not doing this? And that's where, and that's where a lot of things get resolved. Like if you look at what happened with, Alec Bradley came out with the Dirty Hooligan, and Jonathan said, hey, you mind not calling it Dirty Hooligan? And they just changed it to Filthy Hooligan. That's a gentleman's conversation, and things get resolved really quickly.
Right.
And that's how it should be. That's happened to me multiple times where I've had conversations with people. I'm like, hey, you mind not using that because I've already done this? But a lot of times, honestly, it's some of the names are so generic that you're just like, I'm not even going to waste my time. But I don't know, man. I think when you blatantly copy someone, not so much the concept, because if a concept's been used multiple times already, it's no longer original. It's now just part of the flow, right?
Right, right.
But if someone came out with a series based on monster characters, and they didn't call it the Monster series, but they're based off of monster characters, I'm like, come on, man, like it's pretty blatant. But you know what? Listen, I own the trademark Monster in the cigar industry. I own the trademark Halloween in the cigar industry. As long as I don't have to call someone and say, hey, dude, you can't use the word monster or you can't use the word Halloween, I'm okay. If they want to come up with a series of phantoms, I'm okay with it. Whatever. We know where the concept came from.
Sure.
And, what's the old saying? Copying is a sincerest form of flattery.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh well. I guess I've inspired a few things.
Yeah.
And and listen, man, Cuba inspired the hell out of my portfolio, and and if someone really wants to have a lawsuit against me, I guess Cuba should have that lawsuit. Because I follow the path, like that to me is the encyclopedia. That's the wheel, and that's usually where I kind of follow, and that's where the tradition comes from. But again, you have to have respect for the people that came before you. You have to have respect for brands that have been around for a long time. So I would never come out with, Tatuaje X. That would just be stupid, unless Carlito made it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, there's no question that things started to change because from what I can remember, and that was still pretty early for me in cigars and stuff, but things were still kind of traditional, and then Tatuaje came out, and it seemed like after, and what was so cool about that was you had this traditional sense. I mean, your bands and everything. There was this sense of simple and everything. But then the Monster Series started up and then it seemed like things started to change. You had Camacho come out with the Triple Hero, and
Triple Maduro.
I'm sorry, Triple Maduro, and
I think that idea came from Abe, actually.
At Smoke Inn?
Yeah, if you go back in time, I think Abe was the one that came up with that concept, and they licensed it from Abe originally. I don't know exactly, but maybe someone watching might know. Cigar Prop just asked me when the last time I visited Grand Havana Room.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that.
I visited them in February when I was back. I got on a plane in June to LA for a very short trip just to check on a couple things, and I could not go because it was not open, and it hasn't been open since the shutdown. So, okay, back to what we were talking about. I guess I kind of stirred the pot a little bit when I came in. I think when I started, I wasn't really stirring the pot, but when my buddy in Boston said, you need to come out with a theme cigar, and he showed me a pair of Nikes that had Frankenstein on them, and the Monster Series was like birthed in that shop. I think that's where it kind of got a little crazy. And then when I came out with pork tenderloin and I wrapped the cigars in butcher paper, people thought that was kind of strange, but then now everything's wrapped in butcher paper or craft paper, right?
Yeah.
Now,
I don't think there's a lot of original ideas anymore. But
do you have another theme coming up that you have in mind? You don't have to say what it is, but
no, dude. So when the copying stuff really got hardcore, because when you come up with a series like Monster Series or a thing called the Butcher Series, pork chop and pork tenderloin, it's kind of unique and odd for the cigar industry, first of all, right? And when you started seeing a lot of it come about, I started throwing ideas out, like literally on forums, including VOTL. I go, I have an idea. It's open for anybody to grab. I was very like Elon Musk. I'm like, here's my path. Have fun, right? I gave this idea, and I've given it multiple times to where even packaging people were like, I want to make that. And one of them was the Advent calendar. Remember when we were growing up, we had an Advent calendar?
Yeah.
And every day we'd open up a door and we'd grab
Get a chocolate out. Yeah.
Well, my idea for it was going to be a cigar advent calendar, and every day you'd open up a door and you'd have a new cigar.
Man, that would be awesome, man.
That actually would be
And
really
by the
cool.
way, and I've had packaging, like, you know, a lot of the jobbers that do packaging for us, like overseas, I'm like, please let us make you a sample. I'm like, nah, I'm not into it. But I literally put it out there, like, if anybody wants to do this, it's free reign, right?
Right.
And no one's done it. Maybe it's a lot to work on. I had it mapped out though. You could do it pretty easy. But no one's done it.
So
Yeah.
would it be 31 cigars too? I
No,
mean, it seems,
well, the advent calendar would just be through Christmas.
Oh,
You know,
nice.
the 25
Gotcha.
days to Christmas.
gotcha.
So because on Christmas Day, that's the day that you open up and you get the biggest piece of chocolate, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's where you get a 6x60.
Yeah.
No,
No,
yeah,
yeah,
they get bigger each day.
right.
Yeah.
A lot of petite Coronas in that.
Give me ideas over here already.
I was gonna do a thing called Rivals back in 2007. I want to say 2007 or 2008. I was gonna do a thing called Rivals, and I wasn't gonna use logos because of trademark issues,
Hold on.
obviously.
Can I guess what you're gonna say?
Yeah, please.
Comics.
No.
That would be cool though.
Because the whole time I'm
No.
thinking, man, that'll be a cool thing to have comics. I
Dude.
can't use the name, but
Dude, I'm telling you should be part of a focus group because you got some good ideas.
Batman and Joker.
Yeah.
Type.
And
Sweet.
by the way, someone's gonna steal that from you tonight. I guarantee.
Yeah.
You're gonna see the Marvel comic series, but it won't be called Marvel.
no,
It'll
it
be
can't.
called something else. It'll be called something else, but you'll see like a band with the colorways of Iron
Yep.
Man and a
Yep.
band with the colorways of Spider-Man.
Yep, that's what I was already thinking. That
Mark my words, it's going to be the whole new monster series, but cartoon characters, right?
exactly.
Or comic characters.
You got your villains and your heroes.
That's pretty
My thing called Rivals, and I can't do Rivals anymore because someone actually uses the word Rivals. I think it's General Cigar. They actually end up using the name Rivals. But my concept for Rivals back in 07, 08 was sports teams. And
Oh, that'd been
Wow.
sweet.
I was going to use two boxes that would come together and make like two sides of a baseball, but one box would be painted blue and white, and the other box would be painted red and blue for the Yankees versus the Red Sox, right?
Yeah.
That'd be sweet.
And then the other one would be two sides of a basketball coming together, so they'd have to be positioned on the shelf together, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So two sides of the basketball, and one would be, purple and gold, and the other one would be white and green for Celtics versus Lakers.
Yeah.
And dude, I had this plan, and lo and behold, the Lakers and the Celtics end up in the fucking finals together. That same year, and this all came about in the same shop that the Monsters came about at.
Oh wow.
So this was all kind of invented in the same place that Monsters were invented. That shop has long gone. And my buddy Jose that used to own that shop with our friend Jack, who was actually one of my sales rep brothers. We had a lot of fun brainstorming sessions on a lot of wine, a lot of whiskey, a lot of cigars, and a lot of jokes up until 4 or 5 in the morning. And you know what's cool about it? It was such a cross culture of people that we had everybody in that store until 4 or 5 in the morning, drunk, crying, and spitballing. Like. And it was the cross culture of women gay men, gay black men, Arabs, like so many
Everything.
people,
Yeah.
Latinos, like just it was the melting pot. And honestly, I miss those days, and that's what really a cigar store is all about. It's a melting pot, and that's why I always say that race, religion, and politics have no business in a cigar store, because that's not who we are. We can have our personal things, right?
Sure.
But once you enter that cigar store, all bets are off, because now we're talking about one thing, and that's this.
Yeah.
Right.
And we can argue about all those topics, but at the end of it, we go, "Hey, man, I'll see you tomorrow."
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And that's one of the most, I'll say this: that's one of the most cool parts about the documentary Hand Rolled, is that moment when they start talking about a cigar store and the cigar industry, and it's almost like a safe space, and I don't know, it could solve all the world problems.
I want to talk about Hand Rolled in just a second, but I've got two short questions for you. First off, did the Fox Cigar event ever happen? You haven't been out there yet, right?
No, I did a training session at Fox,
Right.
where I came in, I showed the documentary Hand Rolled to their staff and let them, educate them about the industry. And then I had them smoke a line of cigars that I do 3 different wrappers on, which is the Kohonu 2012, which we do Habano, Sumatra, and Broadleaf, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a big teaching experience, because you can educate someone's palate by showing the differences of how wrapper really changes a cigar, especially through the same blend. But we had plans to do an event, and of course, everything that came down, it just canceled the world, right?
Right.
I've been grounded since March 14th. I did take one small trip to LA, and it was weird getting on a plane. Actually, I'll tell you, I felt uncomfortable after being so comfortable for 14, 15 plus years of being on planes.
Right.
I actually felt uncomfortable. But I'm a homebody, man. Like projects, there's a lot of projects. I've been cutting up my knuckles today. Like, you become 50 years old, and you start realizing your skin's not as thick as it used to be, right?
Yeah. So the other question was, has Don Pepin Garcia been bothering you at all about kids? He's a family man. No, not at all, huh?
Because my wife has 3 boys, and I'm the guy that's been around most of their life.
Gotcha.
I'm kind of the father figure.
Okay.
I'm not the best father figure. I'm pretty stern when it comes to rules.
Yeah.
But I'm also very casual in the way I talk to them. I hate to say this, but every other word that comes out of my mouth is usually the word "fuck." I just want that. I want them to understand I'm not trying to be their dad. I'm trying to be their friend, and I'm here to give them advice.
Okay.
But I do have rules, because they do live in my house, and they have to understand that I grew up in a different world. Like I had chores when I was younger. I respected my parents a lot, and I respected my mother tremendously. And I was one of those kids that would help my mother out with everything around the house. So whenever I leave for a trip, before we started this, whenever I would leave for a trip, I would always say, take care of your mother and respect her. It's simple. That's the biggest rule in the household is you cross your mom, you have a huge problem with me.
Right.
Like a huge. Do never cross your mom, because you'll have a huge problem with me. Because honestly, I'm the only asshole that can cross her.
Okay, so hand rolled.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I rented it hand rolled, watched it, then I bought it. I think I watched it 4 more times, and then I bought the soundtrack. I love it, and I listen to the soundtrack like when I'm studying. I do a lot of studying and stuff, and I put it on, and man, it helps me really get in the zone. I absolutely love it. But
yeah, that's all original music too, which is really, really cool.
I know, it's fantastic. And so how did you conceive this idea?
Wasn't my idea. I actually, I always thought it would be an awesome idea to have a documentary, because I literally owned all of the previous really crappy documentaries that were made for the cigar industry.
Okay.
One of them was done by Rick Dees. You remember Rick Dees, the radio guy?
Yeah.
Horrible. You can actually watch it on YouTube.
Okay.
It's horrible.
What's it called?
Oh man, Light 'Em Up by Rick or something like that. I can't remember the name of it, but
okay.
Look up Rick Dees cigar documentary. You can probably find it.
Okay.
There's
crazy.
There's an interesting documentary. Actually, there was a decent documentary that's done by James Suckling, the wine consult or the wine critic. He did it based on Havana. It was pretty one-sided because it was all about Cuba, but he did a good job. They actually, from what I remember, they filmed that in like 5 days. But all the other documentaries about cigars were kind of just whatever, silly, and not really well done. And I thought we needed something more current. And randomly, the same one year at the trade show, 2 guys named Jesse and Steve, they are like commercial filmmakers out of Northern California. Both of those guys were standing outside my booth, and I could tell that they wanted to come in the booth, but they were afraid to bother me. And it was like the last day of the show. Okay. And they had a pamphlet. They had a pamphlet on them, and they kind of waved me down. And I said, "Yeah, what's up?" And they're like, "Hey, we want to pitch you this idea we have about doing a cigar documentary," and it was kind of geared towards the FDA.
Okay.
And I have a lot of wine documentaries that I absolutely love. There's a couple I can name real quick that you guys should all watch if you are into wine at all, but just because they have a cool factor to them.
Okay.
One of them's called Red Obsession.
Red Obsession.
Red Obsession is actually narrated by Russell Crowe.
Wow.
And it's about the Chinese market getting into the Bordeaux wine market.
Yeah,
and
wow.
Kind of buying up all the Bordeaux wines and even to the point where they started their own wineries in China. And then
it wasn't Wuhan, was it?
No, I don't think so. And then there was a documentary about these guys taking their sommelier class called Somm, right? There are 4 guys taking their sommelier test, and it was a big deal of how they were, learning all the tricks to pass the test and studying all these different wine regions. And then they came out with part 2 called Somm into the Bottle. And Somm into the Bottle was like this storytelling thing about the history of wine, the history of the families that started different wine regions, the 10 generations of winemakers in this one family. So it was really telling the stories of these great people in this giant wine industry. And like the cigar industry needs something like this.
Yeah.
Like the cigar industry needs something like this. So I actually had Jesse and Steve watch those documentaries, and they it's funny. I go, if you can do something like this, I'm in. And they got back to me and they said, well, the production level of, Psalm Into the Bottle is not great. We were thinking something a lot more polished. I go, awesome. Like, I don't care. Make it more polished, but I think the stories need to be told. And that's when they went on like a few-month adventure filming people. And it literally took 2 years to finish this project. All the music's original. The narrator is, I don't know if you know, the narrator is Peter Weller, who played RoboCop.
Really?
He's a friend of mine, and I saw him at the Grand Havana Room one night, and I was with Jesse and Steve at the Grand Havana Room. I said, "Here, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go talk to someone." And I walked up to Peter and I said, "Hey, I have a question for you. Like, you ever see the documentary Red Obsession?" He goes, "Yeah." He was a wine guy at one time. I go, "What do you think it took those guys to get Russell Crowe to narrate the documentary?" He goes, "Probably a few cases of wine and a small paycheck."
Okay.
And I said, "What do you think it would take for you to do, the narration on a cigar documentary that I'm trying to help put together?" And he goes, "A box of cigars and a nominal paycheck." And Peter was super generous with his time and super generous with his very low pay. And he goes, "Just put a box of cigars in my locker." We actually recorded all of his voiceovers, his narration at the Grand Havana Room in the back room before they opened, with pillows surrounding them so it would muffle any outside sound.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow, that is so cool.
Yeah, while they were getting ready to open up the club that day. Like, if you saw Jimmy Jackson, the basketball player in the documentary,
Right.
I saw him one day at the club also, and I had a good rapport with Jim. And I said, we were actually at the Super Bowl party at the Grand Havana Room. We always had a Super Bowl party at Grand Havana, and I walked up to Jim and I said, "Hey, it was the same year that the Patriots came back, whatever it was, 28 points, and won the Super Bowl." And we're like, we just saw like crazy history, and everybody was kind of like over anxious about shit. And I said, "Hey Jim, I have a favor to ask." I need you to be in this documentary I'm putting together. And he goes, "Sure." And we recorded his shit at the Grand Havana Room while it was open. In the same situation, we had to literally shut the doors and muffle the room a little bit just so you could get a clear sound. Marvin Shankin had never, literally has done 5 interviews in his whole life.
Really?
And he walked into the room. I wasn't there that day. He walked in the room and told the guys from the documentary, like, "Hey, you should be proud of yourself. I don't sit down for interviews for anybody." No, he actually, I think I don't know verbatim because I wasn't there, but I think the guy said, he said, "I hope you guys are proud of yourselves." Because I don't do interviews.
Wow.
That's pretty awesome.
I mean, all of it was favors, man. All of it was favors. Serge, who did all the musical direction, was Jesse and Steve's best friend, and he did all the musical direction and hired the musician and played drums on all the tracks and recorded all the music with the actual composer, who we got on the cheap, who actually Jesse and Steve and Serge got on the cheap, and made a magical original soundtrack, which is really cool. But in the end, I thought it was like a really brilliantly done, polished piece, and all of it, dude, again, was like, "Hey, do you mind being, film for this, or I had to walk Jesse and Steve over to Carlito's booth and literally say, Carlito, it's really important that you're in this documentary because your family story is a big part of how the cigar industry evolved once, Castro took over that island. And then George Padron and his dad, George actually texted or called me and says, hey, Pete, I keep on getting emails from these guys. Is this a real deal? And I go, yeah. I go, we're actually filming Berta Bravo right now for the documentary. And your family history is part of the history of the cigar industry. So you need to be in it. Like all of it was, just because originally they would email people and people would be like, who are these people? So
Right.
I got involved mainly because I wanted to do it. I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to, I wanted the industry to have this beautiful, for lack of better words, commercial, right?
Right.
And it was a lot of like convincing people and having conversations with, and that's how Eric Newman ended up in the film, and that's how Carlito ended up in the film. They didn't know what they were getting into. A lot of people were very reluctant to be filmed, but I think it came out as a beautiful piece to honor the industry as a whole.
I agree. It's, the first time I watched it, it was, I don't know. I guess I kind of had something else in mind or whatever, but so it was just different than what I had been thinking and stuff. And I was like, man, the production on this is pretty much off the charts, man. It's really good. And I think I waited a couple months and stuff, but I just kept thinking about it. And I was like, okay, I got to buy this thing because I keep thinking about it and stuff. And then the day I bought it, I watched it 2 more times and then watched it a little bit more after that and stuff. And the soundtrack, the soundtrack is just, it's really good.
You watch the film without the soundtrack and it's good, obviously, but the soundtrack really brings up the feels when you're like, it raises your hair. And when you cross the, dude, I get emotional every time I watch the Pepin part, and I'm the one talking during Pepin's part. But
right,
the music really just makes you feel it.
Yeah, very, very good job. I'm very glad that you guys came out with that.
Well, again, I didn't do the magic. I just wrote a lot of checks.
A lot of small checks.
That was a passion project for me. I basically sacrificed a lot of advertising that year to write checks to Steve and Jesse so we could actually do this.
Okay. Wow. That's cool.
And again, and that was a documentary that should have cost $300,000, and we did it for far less. Jesse and Steve got to travel to multiple countries and got to see places like Cuba that they would never thought they would have a chance to do. Right. And actually, you might want to see if you could reach out to Jesse and Steve to have them on there. There are a couple characters that love to talk about making the film, and they have a lot of great stories while they did it.
Oh, I would love to have them on the show. I'll reach out to you on Instagram or email or whatever. Maybe we can make that happen. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we did it, and I'm glad it's getting traction. I'm actually happy that more and more people are seeing it, and Jesse's and Steve's, Jesse and Steve's platform really, when they started getting really into it and seeing the footage and seeing what they could put together, was like, we hope that with this documentary that people will never relate a cigarette with a cigar ever again.
Right.
And I think they proved that point. So
yeah. Yeah, and I was really happy to see Robina in there as well.
Oh, Hiroshi, yeah.
Yeah, I got to interview Hiroshi last year sometime, and
Oh shit.
he did an event at Fox, and they put him in a.
Oh yeah,
They
the
put
Fox.
him.
I have a couple of those here actually.
Yeah, they put him up in an Airbnb, and I went over there and hung out with him for a couple hours and chatted and stuff, and then went to the event, and it was just amazing, and the guy was so cool, just really great to talk to.
I tell you, he said a lot in the documentary that I'm surprised he didn't get in trouble because it goes against the grain of, I can't talk so much on the Cuban side of it because I'm not Cuban, but my wife is, and I hear what she went through when she was, and what her family went through when they were younger, and the amount of oppression and what you're told you're supposed to say, or you're not supposed to say, or what you can do or what you can't do, it's pretty serious. And like I was having a conversation the other day, like my wife and my brother-in-law actually were obligated to pick tobacco in the fields. Like in high school, they were like, that's part of their high school education. You need to go and cut sugar cane and pick tobacco.
Wow.
Like, yeah, you were labor. You were a part of the labor force that wasn't getting paid because you got free high school. Like, so, I mean, I don't know. It's a tough subject for me because I get very angry about when people talk about oppression, and I know that my wife and my wife's family lived through oppression. So,
right.
Yeah.
Let me get off that subject. Let's talk about happier things. So,
sure. So what's the rest of 2020 look like for you?
honestly, I don't know if I'll be traveling. I mean, I might travel to Los Angeles to go to the office a couple times, but I do a lot of stuff remotely through the office. I can literally log into my server computer at the office from here and do all the work that I need to do. I don't need to go. I have a house there, so like I want to check on it to make sure that the toilets are still flushing properly. There's no leaks in the house. Nothing's broken. But I don't know. I don't know when I'm getting on a plane again. The thought process was to get on a plane to go to Nicaragua and work with Jaime and Pepin when they can get on a plane to go to Nicaragua, but I'm not sure if it's 100% safe yet anywhere. So I look at it like every time I get on a plane right now, it's putting someone else at risk. Because I don't want to come back from a plane trip and then go hang out at Pepin's house and realize that I just infected him with something that we can't control. So I'm very cautious about it. The Latin community is very big on when you walk into a room, you walk around to every woman in the room and you kiss them on the cheek. And then you walk up to every man and you shake their hand or give them a hug. Right. And I've always been like, okay, that's kind of strange for me anyways. So I would always walk in the room and go, hey, how's everybody doing? And like social distancing, like I've been a big part of it anyways. So I always joke that the cigar industry is like the king of social distancing, because if you want someone to be away from you, you just light up a cigar, right?
Yeah.
If there's someone like on a street corner that's bothering you because you're smoking a cigar, or you have an unlit cigar, light that thing up and they'll eventually get out of there. So yeah, I always joke about that, but I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, we have cigars coming out, new cigars coming out that are delayed because of everything going on. Bands that are stuck in the Dominican Republic waiting to be shipped to Nicaragua. delays in production on the bands in Nicaragua even. Obviously, cigars are still rolling, but we're at a smaller capacity than normal. We were shut down in Miami for 2 months before we got rollers back in Miami, so that actually hurt our inventory in Miami a lot.
How is it? How's it affecting things in the other countries and stuff? I haven't kept up too much on that, but how has life changed for them?
Well, Jaime had implemented a lot of safety rules very early on in the factory in Nicaragua, like clean rooms to walk through before you enter the factory, hand washing stations, all that stuff, masks for everybody. So he was always ahead of it. But you never know, man, because like places like Nicaragua, they're not really testing. So
sure,
it's hard to say, and the government's not really reporting anything. So it's really hard to say where. We only hear stories right now. So it's kind of up in the air. Someone's asking me what I'm sipping.
Yeah.
Gabe, I was sipping, it's empty. I was sipping a 2001 Pomerol called La Clemence. Chateau La Clemence from Pomerol, Bordeaux. It's part of the Right Bank region. It's mostly Merlot. Actually, this is 100% Merlot. I happen to buy this wine, I want to say 10 years ago. And I bought a lot of it because I got a deal on it. Actually, 9 years ago. But I bought it. I bought a lot of it because I got a super deal on it. Plus, the store that I was buying from, I had a big credit with because I sold a bunch of wine at auction through them. So, I had a bunch of wine that I acquired that I would never drink because I don't need to be drinking, super expensive bottles. I can enjoy wine by drinking a relatively inexpensive bottle of wine.
Okay.
And the wine that I acquired was worth a lot more money than I wanted to waste on pounding a bottle of wine, right? And this was right when the Chinese market was actually hot on Bordeaux, hence the documentary Red Obsession. And I ended up selling this wine for astronomical amounts of money compared to what I paid for it.
Right.
So they said, well, we can pay you, or if you take it as a store credit, we don't charge you any listing fee. I'm like, I'll take it as a store credit because I always need more wine to drink, right? So I ended up getting 20 cases of this wine from them.
Wow.
And if I had to do the math on the wine, I think I paid under $15 a bottle for each bottle.
Oh, wow.
So everybody loves a good deal. I couldn't pass up a good deal.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Huh.
So it became my house wine.
Nice.
And you don't realize how long 20 cases really lasts until you go, wow, I still have 8 cases of this shit.
Wow.
Myself, I've never had red wine.
Normally, if anybody comes over to the house, that's what I open.
Oh, wow.
Because I want everybody to experience an old wine. Because old wines are like old cigars. They evolve into something else.
Right.
And then to me, it cost me very little, and it's a treat for all of us because we're drinking a wine that should have cost about $80 to $100.
Yeah.
Wow.
That I got for under 15. So
that's amazing.
Yeah,
so
I never.
The wine follows me a lot.
I've never drank. I never got into drinking or anything, but there's something. It's probably because it's kind of similar to cigars, or for me, the big thing is coffee. I'm a huge coffee guy. And,
you have origin to your coffee. So if you're a big coffee guy, there's origins to those coffees. There's ways that the farmers grow the plants, crop the plants. It's very much like tobacco, and the way they crop wine. So I think there's a lot of things in those three fields that kind of go together.
Yeah.
I think you see that in a lot of boutique distilleries that literally source like certain grains and certain corns, like from small farmers, and that's what they want to use. So even that kind of has a parallel to it also. They really dive into something different.
Yeah, the part for me though, earlier I was asking you about anything that sort of makes you disconcerted or whatever, and this is with for me coffee and cigars. There seems to have come a point where, I don't know, some of the mystique or something of it has faded because there's too much. There's a lot of gimmicky stuff. There's a lot of, I mean, you see it in both industries. Everyone comes out with something, and there's a story behind it. Everyone's story is their story, right? But the marketing that goes behind the story and everything, and you start to, after a while, when you get smart, you're like, wait a minute, these guys are using the same stuff as those other guys or whatever.
Well, I'll touch on that because so the cigar industry has always been a romance industry. You romance the cigar, right?
Right.
I got tired of it very early on because I thought the romance was bullshit. Like,
okay.
I believe that there's truth in marketing, and education is power, right?
Sure.
Knowledge is power. So when you actually educate your consumer base on what goes into your cigar, it's actually helps you talk about the cigar, but it also helps the consumer understand what they're enjoying. And at the end of it, I think people feel better about knowing what goes into what they're enjoying, right?
Right.
The bullshit factor hit pretty hard. I would say the mid 2000s, where people were like, "Oh yeah, I'm using this very rare Jalapa Rosado wrapper." I'm like, Jalapa's a region, Rosado's a color. What seed varietal is it? What part of Jalapa is it from? Like,
right.
Tell the consumers, because at the end of the day, I mean, I'm in a very lucky space right now because I'm using the majority of the tobacco I use comes from the Garcias. But if you look at a Garcia blend and my blend that I do with the Garcias, they're two completely different cigars. They're not the same, right? So, but there are a lot of people that use the same exact tobaccos, the same identical tobaccos, but they're different. The cigars end up tasting different because each person made their own spin to it. So I've always been to the point where, like, I don't care. I'll tell you what I put into it. You can't copy it. How do you think you can copy it? You don't have the same tobaccos as I do. You might have the same seed varietals, but I'm not telling you exactly where the position of those leaves are in the cigar, and I'm not telling you what primings I'm using. I might tell you it's a priming, but I'm not telling you that it's a fourth priming. And at the end of the day, you're not getting tobacco from lot 2 off of Finca Estrella. So Rocky, George, Carlito, and the Garcias could all be using Nicaraguan tobacco, and they could all put the same exact blend together from the same primings, from the same seed varietals. They're all going to taste different. You know why? They all have their different processes.
Right. It's like that story you told with that when Garcia rolled that cigar for you. Something totally different.
I mean, he took the same tobaccos and rolled me a cigar that was way better than the first 3, just from a conversation.
Yeah, that's
why
that's pretty cool.
And that's why I put Pepin in that master category when it comes to master blenders. I don't put that moniker on a lot of people. to me, there's very few people that fit that category. That's why I have that problem when you come in the cigar industry and you went down to a factory and you had the guy that puts blends together for the factory, and then all of a sudden you market yourself as a master blender. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
27 years old and you're a master blender.
Yeah.
That's why I'll never consider myself one. I'm always an apprentice. I would put Jaime. Jaime will tell you he's an apprentice of Pepin, a student of Pepin. But Jaime, I would put Jaime as a master blender and a master tobacco guy because he knows every stitch of it. Like, there's nothing that can pass by Jaime without him knowing about it. So,
well,
you think about a guy like Eladio from Davidoff. I would put him in that group. I would put a gentleman by the name of Rolando Reyes Sr., who's no longer with us, but he was crazy, but he was one of those masters. He did everything.
You said he was crazy?
I've heard some crazy stories about the old man. I hung out with him a couple times, but I've heard some pretty crazy stories about him.
Really?
He was just an interesting dude. And the cool thing about Rolando Sr. and Rolando Jr., very much like Jaime and Pepin, not only were they picking the tobacco, but they could also put the cigar together and sit down and roll the cigar for you. So there's not a lot of brand owners that can actually sit down and roll you a cigar.
Right.
Especially not the way Pepin rolls a cigar.
Is Junior still running the factory?
Rolando Jr. is no longer part of the family's business, from what I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I knew Rolando Jr. back in the early to mid '90s pretty well.
Huh.
And and he was always a very pleasant person for me. Like, he taught me a lot, and we hung, had a lot of great conversations together, and I hung out with him for multiple days in a row, and he treated me like part of the family. And that's what the cigar industry always has been about for me, that everybody I've been around has always treated me like a family member, which is that's really my love for the cigar industry, and that's why I have so much respect for the people that started their family businesses way before I even picked up a brand with my name on it. It's a very welcoming industry that people really do care for you.
I remember the Puros Indios back in the day being a top-notch stick, man. And I think I was on Thompson's or CI or something a couple months ago, and I saw you could get them for like $250 a stick or something like that, and I was like, wow, that's crazy, man. That used to be a big name, a big brand. Yeah,
that was like mid '90s, '96, '97. They were the hottest thing since sliced bread. I think their biggest fault might have been just the consistency, but it was one of those brands, man. I still have old boxes from the mid '90s.
Oh my gosh!
I actually have cigars that came out of a basement in Union City, New Jersey, that when I got them, they were shit. When I got them, they were 27 years old. So you're talking, I guess, 45 years old now.
Oh my gosh!
Actually, maybe older. I'm trying to remember. It's funny because a buddy of mine who was one of my mentors in the business, who actually told me, he says, tell Rolando Jr. not to show you what's in the basement. And I got off the phone with George Brightman, And I said to Rolando, I said, so you're not allowed to show me what's in the basement. And he took me down to the basement and he gave me these. Actually, I'm sorry. I go back. So at the time I got them, they were 18 years old. So now so that was in 95. So that's another 25 years. So what's that? 33 years?
Yeah, 38 years.
Well, no, I got them. They were 18 years old when I got them. That was in 95.
Okay.
So
yeah,
25 years ago. So you're talking 43 years.
Got you.
So George, in the mid 90s, though, I was early 2000s. So this is already shit. They were 18 years when I got them in 95. In 2001, maybe. Was it around 2001? Maybe it was earlier than that. Maybe it was 2000. I was sitting at the Grand Havana Room, and the chef from the Grand Havana Room in New York, I was sitting with some friends, and the chef came out and said that someone wanted me to give me a cigar, and it was a naked cigar. And he said, you're supposed to tell me what it is. And I looked at it. I smelled the cigar. I always do this. I always smell the foot of the cigar. I love doing that.
Right.
There's something that brings me back in time, kind of like that cigar that brought me back in time earlier tonight.
Yeah.
And I cut it, and I put it in my mouth. And I looked at him. I said, "This cigar comes from a basement in Union City, New Jersey." And he looked at me and says, "How the fuck did you know that?" I go, "Because I have the cigar. I think I had like 5 of them left. I still have like maybe 2 or 3. I have the cigar, and there's a certain funk to it that you just know where it came from."
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a crazy story. Wow.
Well, George used to do that to me a lot, because George, not many people know George Brightman, and George was an educator. He is like the encyclopedia. He knows everything about everything in this industry. He was an educator. He would find young guys like me that were passionate about cigars and kind of scoop them up and say, "Hey, you're coming with me, and we're gonna talk cigars." And he did that with a bunch of us, including Michael Herklotz and a guy by the name of David Kitchens, and my buddy Jose Augusto, who was part of the Monster, origins back in the day from Boston. He loved to teach us. And he would give me cigars and say, "What is it?" There's no band, just what is it? Tell me what it is. And I would have to sit there and play, the process of elimination. And usually when I first started doing it with him, when he started doing it early on, I would usually get it on the second guess. But then he kind of trained me so well that it was easy. It became easy. It almost became like a parlor trick, right? A lot of times guys at the Grand Havana Room in Beverly Hills would come up to me and say, "Hey, what is this cigar?" I'm like, "It's an Epicure #1 from a cabinet of 25. And they're like, "How the fuck do you know that?" I'm like, "Well, I know the size. I know the origin because the way the tobacco tastes and smells. But I also know that you have that in your locker."
So I've got kind of a cool Rolando Reyes story. I met a guy, a High Desert Man was at a gun show in Phoenix, and there was this guy there that had served in Iraq, and all of his, I don't know what they call it, but all the guys in his company or whatever had received each one a box. They were just called Navy SEAL cigars.
Oh yeah.
He and I met at the show. He got him in 2009, and we met at the show last year. And he said, "Hey, you're a cigar smoker. I've got a box of cigars that I don't smoke." He said they're probably not good because he lives in California. They've been sitting in his garage since 2009, so 10 years. And he said, "Do you want them?" I was like, "Heck yeah, send them to me. I'll check them out." And he sends it to me, and I flip the box over, and it says Rolando Reyes on the bottom of it. I'm like, "You got to be kidding me. This is crazy, man." So I went through a process of, I figured these cigars are gone, but it would be interesting just to smoke one to see what does it taste like and stuff. So I went through a process for, I don't remember, 6 or 8 months, bringing the cigar back and just trying to get it to the right humidity. And then I smoked it, and it wasn't great, but it still had flavors. There was still some flavors there and stuff, and just kind of a cool thing,
I actually still have a cigar that Rolando Reyes Sr. rolled for me.
Really?
Back in I think it was 96, they had the Big Smoke Miami at the Omni Hotel here in Miami.
Okay.
And I was there helping out. My thing when I would go to Big Smokes, obviously I was in the business. I worked behind a counter that I didn't own, but I was in the business. I just wanted to be part of the culture. So I would go to Big Smoke and help out anybody who needed help, like passing out cigars. I just wanted to be part of it, right?
Right.
And one year at 96 Big Smoke, Rolando Senior, Rolando Junior, and they're kind of like their show roller. Man, I want to say his name was Juan, if I remember. They were all rolling cigars. It was like this big spectacle at the Miami Big Smoke. Everybody wanted to be around that table to see what they were doing, and they were rolling these big, gigantic torpedoes with covered feet.
Okay.
And I still have a few of those.
Jeez. And then when you say big, you're talking in length. What size was it?
It was like a grand pyramid, which would be like a longer, fatter, traditional like torpedo, which would be like a Monte Cristo torpedo that you blew up, and made it fatter and longer.
Okay. Wow. So those Puros Indios, are they? You still smoke any of them? How are they smoking?
I haven't smoked one in a long time, so they're just sitting, buried in my collection.
Right.
I'm kind of a little bit of a hoarder when it comes to cigars. I have a fairly large collection of old stuff that I look at and I go, I'll get to that later.
Right.
And some of them are probably past their prime, but some of them, the way I kept them, they're probably rocking. Like I have original batches of my own cigars, and every time I smoke one, they're still on point, and they still have a kick to them. And those are 17 years old.
Wow.
Man, that's a long time.
It's all about how you store it, though, huh?
And trust me, I've made mistakes over the years where I've ruined cigars too. That I ruined a box of Davidoff number ones, the Lancero size, that was from 1984.
Oh yeah, I think you talked about that on Kevin's show.
I ruined them. They got over humidified, then they're tasting like cat piss.
I've had a cigar that tastes like fish.
Yeah, it's not the smell. So that's what sense memory is all about. The smell of cat piss. You know what it smells like.
Yep.
Yeah.
You'll come across something eventually that you're oh my God.
I had one that it tasted like if I went out fishing and I was messing with nothing but fish and gutting fish and then touched my cigar and lit it, It was the most horrible thing I ever smoked, and I was so mad because this tobacco was 100% comes from Mexico. So I was like, oh hell yeah, Mexico! You know, my family's from there. That's where I'm from. Whatever. Well, I'm from here, but I was like, oh, I can't wait to try this out, man. I lit that thing up. At first, it tasted like those cigarettes that are like the Clover cigarettes.
Clove cigarettes.
And I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. And then out of nowhere, just fish. A straight fish. Like if I just sucked on my fingers after gutting a fish, I was like, this is bad. Like, no way. I couldn't finish. I went about halfway. I was done.
Yeah, dude. For the longest time, I had this. I don't know what it was, but I had this like thing with like breakfast cereal and the smell of cigars. And like I called John Huber one day when he was still working for CAO, and they had a new cigar called CAO Extreme that was made by Nick Perdomo. That was actually very good. But every time I would smoke it, it reminded me of Golden Grams. And I was like,
that's what your cigar reminded me of whenever I first lit it and I was playing with it. The texture of it reminded me of whenever you put the Golden Gram in your mouth, and it's got that texture where it's kind of wet, but not wet, a little sticky. I was just kind of like, wow, this reminds me of Golden Grams.
Nice. Yeah,
I like that.
I challenge all you guys to take an Opus X.
Okay.
Take an Opus X, take off the cellophane, and just sniff. Put your nose in it. Just don't be shy. Just sniff the foot. And if you don't smell cinnamon raisin toast, there's something wrong with you. Because it's so pure. You know what cinnamon raisin toast is.
Yeah.
Not the cereal version, but when you were young, everybody made cinnamon raisin toast, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's that smell of the butter mixed with like that cinnamon and the raisins, and you're just like, oh my god, this cinnamon raisin toast. So every time I smell it just to smell it.
So I've got a question about holding on to your cigars for a long time. Is the trick with keeping the cigar in a good flavor and whatever? And obviously this isn't going to translate on all cigars, but do you want to? In my mind, you would want to have the humidity a little bit lower than normal, and probably store them cool. I store all my cigars cool anyways, but is that off?
But no, you're correct. I wouldn't go too low. I mean, again, this is personal preference. But some people will be like, oh, I like to keep my stuff at 60 degrees and 60% humidity. I look at that as more of a problem because you get too low in humidity and you start losing the natural oil to tobacco, right?
Right, yeah.
And that's just my personal feeling about it. Some other people will tell you differently, but that's the way I feel about it. Like you go too low, you start losing those natural oils, and those natural oils are what are a big part of the flavor, right?
Sure, yeah.
So I always like to kind of lean towards, mid to high, but not 70, but like that 67 range.
Okay.
I like the cold aspect for sure. But I still want the humidity to be there to keep those natural oils flowing. The big problem with cigars is that when you don't rotate them and they're sitting in low temperature and the humidity spikes without you knowing it, that's when mold starts being produced, right?
Right.
You need the airflow. Then there's the other aspect, like cedar. You never want to leave a cigar locked in a cedar box for too long because eventually it starts tasting like the cedar. That's why I always say, if the cigar producer puts it in cellophane, leave it in the cellophane because it neutralizes the environment a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to ask you that. That's interesting.
It minimizes the environment. And the cedar aspect won't penetrate the cigar that quickly. So after a certain period of time, I'll start taking cigars out of their. This is before, so I used to have naked cigars in the box where I would just have a piece of wax paper that went like this, right? Just kind of over the cigars, but the foot and the head would be exposed. Over the years, I've started packing them completely in bundles inside the box, so it actually reduces the cedar contact.
Gotcha.
But so my older ones that I didn't have that barrier, I would actually take them out, put them in a Ziploc bag, and then throw them back in the box that they were in. Just to kind of, restrict the amount of cedar contact that was happening.
Yeah.
And it's personal preference. I just didn't want to taste something that tasted only like wood. It's like old bourbons. Eventually, they're going to taste too much like the barrel, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
So at some point with the cigars, the cedar kind of overpowers the tobacco, and that's eventually all you taste.
Tat K222.
Yeah, that's made in Miami. It depends, though. We have two versions of it. One is made in Nicaragua that has the Reserva band on it, but at the bottom of the Reserva band it says broadleaf.
Okay.
But the one we make in Miami also have a Reserva band on it, but it has nothing on the band other than Reserva, and that's made with Habano.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
I'm going to guess he's probably smoking. Sean's probably smoking the one made in Miami, which there's one for you. Those are packed in foil bundles inside the box. So the foil paper gives it even more of a barrier so they can actually sit and be in their own microcosm for a long period of time without capturing too much cedar, but also kind of almost like sweating in their own little bottle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's why I put a lot of stuff in foil paper.
That's pretty smart.
It's not my, it's an
You
old
said you bought it
Cuban.
in Miami, or you got it in Miami.
And there you go. Yeah.
Huh.
It's not
pretty cool.
It's not my concept. That's a Cuban concept that no one was really utilizing that much anymore, and I kind of brought it into my portfolio in 2003, and I've been doing that since 2003. To the point where, there you go, so many people started using the same foil paper that I actually started making my own foil paper.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that I'm kind of glad to hear that. I probably need to rotate my cigars a little bit more. I'm kind of bad about that. But I've got a few different humidors, but one that has what I call my top shelf cigars, and they're just cigars that I'm aging for a period of time or whatever, and I think I keep that one. It's right around 65 all the time, humidity, and temperature. It never goes above 65. In the winter, it drops down to about 59.
That's nice. But 65 is comfortable.
Yeah.
I think that's a great humidity. I mean, everybody's got their own way in enjoying cigars, and I've had conversations with a lot of consumers, and a lot of people ask me, like, what should I be doing? I'm like, just do it until you find the formula that works for you, because
Works for you.
at the end of the day, it's your palate, not my palate. I like cigars like this. You might like cigars drier side. I find my cigars smoke for me better like this, but you might find that my cigars smoke better for you this way. So there's no real formula. It's really personal preference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try to keep mine around 66, 67, somewhere around there.
Mine's 67.
The biggest fear factor is temperature. You want to keep that low because you always have that fear of beetles.
Yeah.
Like in the 17 years that I've had my brand, in my personal inventory that I keep at my office, in the climate that they're stored in, I've never had a bug problem. But I've heard stories of retailers having problems with my Miami Brown label bug problems. I'm like, it could be the temperature of your humidor. Simple.
Yeah.
It's a hard conversation to have because,
Yeah.
you know, like I got a bug hole, you know, all my top boys have bug holes. And like, you need to look at the temperature because that's a key factor of where, you know, the incubation period of the beetles start. Because that egg on that leaf, which is pretty much on every piece of the plant, is going to hatch eventually if it's not kept in the proper conditions.
Yeah, if it's too hot, and it's too wet, perfect temperature for it to.
You know, that's kind of a crazy concept to think that. I mean, how long can they go?
Sean just asked what the ideal temperature is. I would say anything below 70, but I choose to be closer to 66, 67. If I start creeping above that, I get a little scared.
Yeah, that's how I am. I can go down to like 65, but I keep around there. Once I start getting lower, I feel like they're a little too dry for me.
If you're keeping constant temperature humidity at 70, you should not have any problems. It's when you start creeping into the low 70s and mid 70s is when you're going to have that problem.
Yeah, but 70, yeah, that's tough to keep it on there. Man,
Yeah.
So how long can an egg exist and still be able to hatch?
Long time, from what I know. A long time.
That is crazy. I mean, if you think about it, they're sitting sometimes it's an acre for years, and you get them and then start. They probably sit in your humidor for another few more years and then still hatch. So it's got to be a very long time.
Yeah, because it's there. It's just laying. It's just laying dormant, waiting. The only real cure is not fumigation. Fumigation is like a temporary, like like a Band-Aid, right, on a big wound. The biggest thing, the best thing you can do is freeze the cigars, which cracks the eggs, and they're no longer viable. Like they're cracked, they're dead. And that's why a lot of cigar companies, especially with the FDA trying to become involved, they've moved to freezing their product before it leaves the factory. Because there's no chemicals involved, and it eliminates any problems.
So what's the freezing process like? Is it how long are they frozen for?
So usually a 72-hour freezing period. So 3 days at below freezing, and then they bring it back slowly in that room. They turn it off, and then they bring it back slowly so it can acclimate again. So anytime you even do the home freezing, like you did, I forgot about cigars in my freezer one time for, I think it was like 3 months. And I was like, oh shit, they're probably toast, right?
Yeah.
I actually brought them back slowly, very slowly, added humidity slowly to them. So, because if you shock the cigar, you're going to end up ruining them, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I brought them back over a 3-month period, and they ended up being some of the best cigars I smoked.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And you just can't rush it. Like if you end up doing the freezing process, do it really slow because you don't want to take the risk of wrappers being cracked or shocking the tobacco.
Yeah. Well, my house through the year fluctuates so much. In the summer it gets hot, in the winter it gets really cold and stuff. And but I've got a basement, and my basement stays within a pretty tight tolerance. So I just moved everything down there. And
basements are awesome, man.
Yeah.
I wish I had a basement here in Miami, but if I dig down 6 feet, I'm going to hit water. So,
Yeah.
and by the way, I'm inland. There is no hills in Miami. Like I'm inland, way away from the water. But if you go down too far, you could have hit water.
Yeah. Huh. Well, Pete, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Man,
and
I'm
hanging out.
having a blast, dude. I'm here. So if you wanna shoot the shit for a while, I got nowhere to be.
I'll do it, man. I got nowhere to be. I don't know how you guys feel, but
I'm good,
we're still.
yeah. Well, they're waiting for me at some party right now.
Oh,
and I
for
got
real?
the beer sitting right here.
Oh, you're supposed to bring the beer?
I'm supposed to bring the beer and sit in the cooler with ice. I told him, I was like, it might be a couple hours, but oh well. If y'all want to bring it, I gotta wait.
Well, we're actually 10 minutes away from 3, so
3 hours, yeah. That second.
You know me, I love talking. I love shooting the shit. So for me, it's just a cool hangout session of people that want to have a good conversation.
Talking about the strip and stuff. That was awesome because I don't remember where I read it. Maybe it was the Cigar Aficionado. Anyways, I was like, holy cow, he was there right around the same time I was. I know what the scene was, man.
Yeah, we were in it from 89, late 89. But realistically, in Hollywood from 90, the band, up until 1992 and a half, I guess. We had a good time, man. It was like very fast paced, because we ended up becoming popular pretty quick, and we moved very quickly. And before we knew it, we were traveling a lot and playing a lot of shows. We used to go to Hawaii and play 2 and 3 weeks at a time as like a club band or a house band or a club.
Oh wow!
And it was really meant for us to just get really tight and get our chops together. But I think really when the pressure came on from the lawyers and the management of like, here's your schedule, by this date you're going to get signed to this record label, that's when everybody started freaking out. And that's when we ended up breaking up.
Yeah, for me it wasn't a fun experience. I wanted to go to MIT. That was really why I went there. And I got involved with the band, and it was really kind of a disaster. Our first singer was really kind of a diva and didn't last long with us. And then our second singer was totally different. And he ended up auditioning and sort of acting for a little while as in the porn industry to try and make some money and stuff. And so you talk about the apartments. We lived in a really small studio apartment. There were 6 of us. We had a hideaway bed, the couch folded out. 2 of us slept in the bed. 2 guys slept under the bed. 1 guy slept on another couch we had.
Damn.
And 1 guy slept in the closet on the floor. And
I mean, let's be real, Vic. That was college for us. That was our college. That was our version of college, because I graduated high school and got the fuck out of Gardner, Maine. So that was college for me, and I wouldn't give it up for anything. And we have a kid. We have one of the boys going to college this year, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to college. I'm going to Boston, and I'm going to go to college." I think every kid needs to get away and experience life, and I think for me, street knowledge became exactly the most important thing in my life, because that street knowledge I gained from, basically living on the streets, really, really helped me become a little harder, but also a little bit more compassionate towards my surroundings and to other people. So
right.
I think it was a good learning experience.
It was. For me, it was a lot of fun. It was, I tried to, I remember my senior year in Montana, and all year I kept reading stories and everything. I was trying to, because I figured, okay, the one thing is it's going to be culture shock for me, because going from Montana to Hollywood, it's a big change.
Yeah.
So I really tried to prepare myself for that. And going into it, I felt pretty good, but I never expected to go as long as I did without having a job. Man, I was walking the streets every single day, walking miles and miles, just trying to find some kind of job. Yeah. And when I actually finally got the job at Jerry Tune, I lied my face off to get that job, and it just happened to work out because up in Montana, Bozeman, Montana, we had one music store, and I hung out there all the time, and the guys knew me and everything, and I told the people at Jerry Tune that I had experience. I worked at this shop up in Montana and everything, and they wanted to call my references. And so I gave them the shop number, and I said, ask for this guy. He was my manager. And, I was just hoping, please don't call, just, forget about it or whatever. But they called, and my buddy up there, he knew what was going on. He just kind of put two and two together, and he was like, oh yeah, Vic did some good sales for us and stuff. And he just totally went along with it. And he and I had never talked. And I ended up getting the job, and it was tough, man, being right next to Guitar Center. It was just really, really hard.
Yeah, actually, my first job in Hollywood, again, I came from vocational school. My senior year in high school, I learned how to run printing presses, and I ended up working my whole senior year in high school running printing presses for various print shops. And so when I got to Hollywood, I got a job in a print shop literally 2 or 3 doors down from Jerry Tune, actually. So right across the street from my office eventually.
Okay.
So my office was kitty corner to Guitar Center, but it was directly across from Jerry Tune. It was right next to the Thai place.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
What was the Thai place called?
I don't remember the name of it.
It's still there. Darn. I can't remember. But the print shop was I think 3 shops down from Jerry Tune.
Oh my gosh, that is so crazy. That is so crazy. What a small world, man.
It is a small world.
Wow.
But I mean, it's like those were the days though. You'd walk into Guitar Center and you'd just fall in love with every instrument in front of you. But then you'd go over to the carbon store, and you would want to I would dream to have one of those giant carbon setups. Yeah. I don't know if when you were a kid, if you got the carbon catalog. I used to get the carbon catalog when I was younger. So
no, the one I got was, I can't remember what it was called, but the drum sets that they had some Tama and stuff like this, but the CB700, and this was back when CB700 was just like a catalog. It was they were made out of crap particle wood basically, and that was my first kit technically was a Ludwig, but then I thought I was upgrading and I bought a CB700, and I had it for a couple months, and I was like, this is crap, man. And I always had my eyes on a Tama kit, and I ended up getting a Tama kit, and I've been a Tama player all my life.
Yeah, there's a funny story actually. So fast forward in life, I literally lived on the Sunset Strip and went to the guitar stores all the time, hung out at Guitar Center a lot, looked at things that I could never afford to buy, and then I get in the cigar industry and start building a rapport in the cigar industry as someone that has a lot of knowledge about the industry, and I started getting hired to do work at different shops, and eventually I got hired to be the director of retail for Grand Havana. But I was a member of the Grand Havana before I became their director of retail, and I ended up playing golf with the owner of Guitar Center. Like,
No way.
random, like just how life shifts, and like, oh, this is Ray Shearer. He owns Guitar Center. I'm like, okay.
Oh my gosh.
That's funny. Well, guys, we got to go. We got to definitely head out.
Well,
all right, guys.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate coming on and shooting the shit with you guys, and have fun at
awesome.
your party. I can't say enough about the industry. Love it. Love what you guys are doing. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for letting me talk your ear off for a few hours.
Oh, we got to do it again.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man.
Hey,
Absolutely.
if the Fox event ends up happening, let me know, because I definitely want to come down and hang out with you for a while.
No, absolutely, man. I don't know when it will happen, and again, I don't even know if I'll be getting anywhere this year.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
I have virtual events planned all the way through October and November so far. So
just like on Zoom or something.
Yeah. I don't know, Zoom or the virtual events we usually end up doing on one of those platforms, and then it goes on Facebook Live and stuff like that. So
yeah.
And then there's some events that have been private too, which are kind of fun because you can say things that you don't get in trouble for them.
Right. Well, thank you so much you've been very generous with your time. I really appreciate it. And
thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, man. It's a blessing to have you on.
It gave me a chance to smoke some cool cigars tonight. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Time, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You have a good one.
Take care.
God bless everyone. Have a great night. And we'll catch you in 2 weeks.
All right. Bye, guys.
Later.